All right, I think I've got the microphone set up. How's it going out there, little juke? What are those little gnomes? Are they gnomes that are celebrating? You're cooking. I saw a message on my Discord thing that said you're cooking chukin. Chukin? Chicken? Chukin? And that you were going to show us a picture when it was done. I've been playing around with camera settings and trying to basically get stuff set up. I haven't done a home stream for a really long time. I'm the chook. I'm cooking sausage with potatoes. Very complicated stuff. Okay. Well, don't cook yourself. As delicious as you might be, that seems like a bad idea. I've been mostly doing SEM streams for the last, I don't know how long. I mean, maybe at least a month. I don't think it's been since I've done a, um, a stream from home. And I'm still sort of backing out how I want to do things. But I've got two cameras and then the camera attached to my microscope, and I think that they're all working correctly. I had a small sort of snafu because my camera uses this sort of webcam software that the people from Olympus put out, and it expired. I don't think they intended it to, but it expired right on January 1st in 2021, and they haven't fixed that yet, and so it won't work unless I turn the clock back um, on my computer. And of course, the problem with turning the clock back on my computer is that I'm using a lab computer to run my microscope when I'm not streaming. And the lab computer is through the university software. And so they don't allow me to adjust the time. So, and I could normally use my laptop, but my laptop is also a university laptop and it won't let me change the time. So, hey, Anarchy Kitchen, how's it going? How you doing? I should probably warn people I can't really do shout outs very easily because I'm on my home computer, but and also my normal moderator, which would be Pacific Plankton, is she's out on a field trip. I don't know if she's coming to the stream or not. But if you come early, I guess I can still type before I have to do other things at the same time. Anyways, so I can't adjust the software, so I ran. Hey, Mama Bonbon, how you doing? It's nice to see you. So I ran out to the store and I got a video capture card, which I had avoided doing before, to sort of bounce my camera through. I'm sounding like I need shares help. What does that mean? I guess maybe there's a song there, but I don't know what it is. Anyway, so like I went and got a video capture card for my camera, which is different than the video capture card that I was using for the little microscope that I got for Sylvia, and then I had to sort of wrangle all of the stuff to make. Oh, turn back time. Got it. It was a pun. Um, Anyway, so I have this idea for tonight that I would sort of show how I've been collecting the well, at least one of the sticks that I use for looking for water bears in, and then so I've got a little video I can play. And I thought at the same time the video was running, what I would do is, since it doesn't got a lot of sound, it's basically just me hiking with my camera, my phone, that I would scrape a stick like right here while we're doing it, so you can kind of see the whole process instead of me just talking about what that process is. So I've got a separate camera to sort of look at me while we're scraping the stick, and hopefully I don't make too big of a mess in the lab here, the living room, dining room lab, and then you can sort of see the whole process. And maybe if there's actually water bears in the first samples that we look at, then there'll be some of the water bears that'll be sort of coming to life, like rehydrating as we watch. And then I also have some material, I should say, that is from Pacific plankton that we've been looking at in the SEM for the last couple of times that we've broadcast. Well, I guess it's just me that I've been broadcasting from the SEM. Hey, there's Pacific plankton. Hello. Connecting from live from a remote woodland area. And so I think after we do a little bit of water bear hunting, hopefully we'll find some, and then I'll get bored with it, and then we'll look at some of those diatom samples in the light microscope, because we've been looking at them in the SEM for well, hopefully we'll get to see water bears and rotifers and whatever else is on these sticks sort of coming to life, rehydrating and coming back to life. Normally, when I do this, I sort of scout ahead and try to make sure that I have water bears in my samples before I start, because sometimes it's hard to find them. But I thought I'd do it a little differently tonight, and just work on sort of showing a little bit of the how-to of what's been done to get to the point where I'm streaming, and then hopefully that'll be a little bit entertaining, and I guess we'll just see. So I guess without further ado, I could switch the scenes to let's see, this one, and tiny dragon on fire. Who lit the dragon on fire? Good evening. Okay, so what we'll be doing is, first of all, I'm going to turn on this little video over here. Hopefully that's not too distracting. It's really just me kind of wandering through a local park, and I thought it would be kind of fun to have that play while I was actually prepping the sample. So this is the sample that I collected in the video that we're watching, and it's a little washed out from the light, but it's either this or it's too dark. So you can see, hopefully, get this to focus on the short distance. It's just got some sort of crusty stuff all over it, right? All up and down the stick, and that crusty stuff is lichen. And that's the normal bark color back there, that sort of reddish, brownish color right there. And as I rotate it around, you'll see how much brighter the actual lichens are. And that's up there is just the broken part where I broke the stick. Hey, Ribozoid, how you doing? So here's the components of our stew that we're making. Doing a little cooking of my own little chook. And the first part is the stick. The second necessary ingredient is just a little bit of water. Our house has a RoPure tap, so that's not just tap water. Your normal tap water probably has chlorine in it, and depending on where you get it, and so you probably want to use distilled water from like a jug if you're doing this. If you want to follow along on this experiment sometime later on your own, you don't want to use your tap water because it's probably got chlorine in it. And that's very likely going to kill things because that's what chlorine's good at, is killing microbes. And then the other thing that we'll need is a small knife. You could use something else if you wanted to. This is just a little cheap kitchen knife, a paring knife that I've sacrificed to the water bear organisms, I guess. And I don't think I've ruined anything, but it's probably not very sharp anymore. And then I've just got this little, this is a little Pyrex container that I bought a bunch of these because I was making hummingbird feeders, and I was using these for the you know, to put the hummingbird juice in, and then it has a cute little red lid. Somewhere in here. Ha. And then I found these like hummingbird flower pieces, and then you can just put the hummingbird juice in there. It's pretty nice. Anyway, that's aside. So all we need to do if we wanted to look for those water bears is just take a little bit of the knife and sort of run it over the part of the lichen that that we think is likely the most likely to have our actual water bears. And so, oh, should I have put ASMR again? I don't know. Maybe I should, because I'm making stick rubbing noises, you know, with the knife. So hopefully you can hear those. It's part of the full water bear experience for tonight. You get to hear the actual sticks being destroyed, and simultaneously, yeah, Scratchy. Hey, Mind of a Snail. Can somebody give Mind of a Snail a shout out? Hopefully Pacific Plankton, but if she can't, I'll try to get to it in a second. So Mind of a Snail, I should talk about the people who come in the channel, because I get a lot of streamers who visit, our streaming friends. Mind of a Snail does some really cool sort of, I don't know, trippy art displays, and they take media from stuff that they create and also stuff that people contribute. And I often try to contribute to their streams. And then simultaneously, one of them plays really cool guitar overlays on top of it. And you can see I'm doing a bit of damage to the lichen here. I'm scraping off large parts of it. There's still a lot of it down here. And I'm making kind of a mess on my desktop as well. And if you're wondering to yourself, oh, aren't you destroying some of the water bears or whatever else might be in the lichen? Probably, but probably not the water bears, because they're used to sort of really high pressure and all kinds of crazy things when they're in their ton state. You know, they're just kind of some dry cells. And some of them I probably got, but most of them I probably didn't. So I'm just looking for spots that have like high concentrations of lichen. And we're not doing this in any kind of scientific fashion, in the sense that I haven't measured anything, or I'm not looking at the density of water bears and the sticks or anything like that. Just got this one stick though. Actually, I have a pile of sticks over there on the other side of the room that I've been collecting doing this. And because I haven't streamed in so long, but I do still keep collecting sticks as if I was going to stream every other night, apparently. And I've got a little bit of water bear all over everything here, and lichen, and probably rotifers. So I've completely contaminated my surface. But fortunately, I cleaned it before we started. So this is highly scientific, this part. So yeah, and Little Chook, who's here as well, I think still, is an artist, and she sometimes gets inspired by the crazy things that I put on Twitch and my science streams, and puts up with my sciencey part. So you should check her out. I put in something. What did I put in? Oh, you can't see it. Later, I'll show that. So you can see there's just some of this lichen dust down at the bottom of our bowl, and some of it's kind of chunky still, and that's not helpful. So I'm going to try to break it up a little just with my finger. Um, you don't want chunky lichen. Um, was there ice on the pond? Um, oh, you had water bears on your stream. Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah. I still didn't see that stream actually. I need to go back and watch it. Hopefully it's still available. Anyways, so you had some company, some guests who were doing water bears, puppets and stuff, right? So, and then Pacific Plankton, who's here as well as a moderator, is also another streamer, and we'll look at some, hopefully near towards the end of the stream, we'll look at some of the diatoms that were present in samples that Pacific Plankton collected. You can always catch Pacific Plankton on Mondays and Thursdays from midnight to 2, except for this week, where she's not able to actually get any streaming in. And I should also point out that was inspired to start looking around for water bears and streaming it by my friend A Tiny World, who interviewed me today it was released today. She interviewed me like a month ago for her podcast. And if you click on the Twitter junk down there, or the Instagram junk down there, below us in the About section, you should be able to find a link to that, a direct link. So, let's see. Oh, and also Anarchy Kitchen's here. And hello, Moose Does Stuff. Who wants chunky lichen? Nobody. Well, sometimes. And Anarchy does really cool cooking streams where he sort of travels the food globe cooking stuff. So, as you can see, I was walking around in these woods in that video for quite a while, and I passed a lot of really good sticks. I was just being really picky for some reason, and I don't know why. There's plenty of stuff there I could have picked up all over the place. So, you're hoping the laptop will cooperate. Okay, so I've got this small glass of water right here. As I mentioned, our glass of water is reverse osmosis purified water because I guess I'm a scientist and I have to have reverse osmosis purified water. Oh, little mushrooms in the stream. I guess it's that way. Back there. And some really cool mosses. And I thought about collecting them, but I've had zero luck collecting water bears and mosses, so I skipped it. But I just thought, oh, here's a bunch of really cool old mossy logs. I should show those when I'm walking around. Anyway, so I just got a little bit of this water, and you can just, again, not being completely scientific, but I'll just add it into the whole thing. And at least in theory, if there's water bears present, this will start to hydrate them out of their crypto-organic state, sort of like hibernation, but, they're really small organisms, so we give it a special name for their cryptobiotic states, and, like you can't tell that they're actually living is what that means, and what we got is a little bit of a stew, a little lichen stew. Oh, it turns out your internet is spotty. Well, that's okay. We can manage with partial moderation. Hopefully everybody out there is going to be cool, or else I'll have to get my own sword out and stab people, or make Sarah do it. Somebody else is here. So, what I'm stirring the sample with is just this thing, which is a pipette, but I've cut the tip of it off, and that's because the bore is too skinny normally for, the tip of it is normally too skinny for lichen to pass through easily. And so I just cut it off so I could basically, grab a chunk of this stuff in the pipette without discriminating some of the larger chunks out of it, right? So that's all I did there. Relatively simple, and probably just added a little too much water actually. But you want to try to get as much of the material as you can without getting chunks that are way too big. And then normally what I would do is just let it settle, right? So you can see, try not to squeeze it out onto my lap. You can see there's a bit of the lichen in there, and it's sort of flowing around, but the bigger parts are accumulating down here at the bottom. So sometimes I'll just stand it up and let it sit like that for a while, and that causes everything to kind of move down towards the bottom. Some of the stuff is also light, and because it's plant material, it floats to the top. And so you bug started barking at the bird calls. Oh, in the video. Sorry about that. The sound doesn't play on my end, so hopefully it's not overwhelming the rest of what I'm trying to say. Anyway, the idea is just to try to separate the lichen from the water, and that's so that we don't have to search through a whole bunch of water. Instead, we have sort of really dense material. And then what I can do, hopefully, is just take one of these microscope slides and set it down. And hopefully you can still see that. Maybe I'll move to the other side. One thing you don't want to do, which I just did, is get the back side of these slides wet, because then it's going to stick to my microscope stage. But a little bit of water got on I cleaned all the water bears off again. Anyway, so there's that. Got sort of chunks of it down at the bottom, and I'm just going to put a couple of drops on, and then I'm going to squeeze all this stuff out in between. That's mostly water, and now what we have is mostly what was up at the top, sort of lighter weight material. You can come back in and put some of that on here. Now, normally when I look at things on the light microscope, I will put a cover slip on it because I'm looking at really small stuff. But this sort of chunky stew that we have that's going in right now onto the microscope probably is going to work a little bit better as the volume is good. Oh, good. Oh, you have birds, Mama Bonbon? Cool. They're not going to get jealous of the cardinals or anything, are they? Or maybe there's some woodpeckers or something out there in the sound. Okay. Is that a kitty behind me? Yes. That is a kitty behind me. That's Wednesday. Wednesday is hanging out on the couch, licking herself. So I can bring her over if you want to see Wednesday. Hang on. Wednesday's not a fan of streaming. She doesn't want to be on the camera. She doesn't want to be held very much. Hey, there's the stick that I just picked up and scraped off, I think. But this is our cat Wednesday. Yeah. It's really kind of struggle when you put the wet stub on, or wet slides on the light microscope, and then it sticks to it. Anyway. So, at some point there, when I picked up the stick, I think I crack it so you can kind of hear. I think I did it so you could actually hear the breaking of the stick, because it was a really long stick and I didn't need all of it. Oh no, it's Wednesday, like the day, Wednesday. You know, middle of the week, hump day. Your birds don't like the crows or the blue jays. Um, yeah. So I'm gonna move this a little bit, and I think I'm gonna switch to this camera. So that box is annoying me a little. Let's see. Put it somewhere else. And then, right. So now you can kind of see this. I think that the hike's almost over, actually. I was getting kind of close to people, and I didn't want to accidentally record people. So I'm kind of pointing the camera away from where the people were. See, there they are, just briefly. You know, because if they didn't want to be on my stream, I don't want them on my stream. But this is a park that's pretty close to where we live here in Terre Haute. And I actually collected that video footage in the stick. Yeah, like Wednesday Addams. She was named by the shelter that we adopted her from. And they had like a, you know, like they do, like when there's a clutch of organisms that they are collecting at the same time, they will, they'll name them in a sequence. So there was like a Morticia and a Wednesday, and I don't think there was a Pugsley, but they must have had one of the other one other Addams family character, and we liked Wednesday. Initially, the plan was to name the cat Eevee after the Pokemon, because Sylvia's fixated on foxes, and Eevee's kind of like a reddish brown or orange color. And then we got there and we heard that the cat's name had been Wednesday, and she decided that she liked Wednesday better. So I don't think that she even I don't think she's ever even seen the Addams Family, other than maybe like clips on videos or something. I know we never watched that movie, or you know, like going way back, the TV show. She clearly doesn't know anything about that. But you know, there's she was excited about it anyway, so we went with it. Okay, so now we're gonna get into a little bit of the microscope time, and you can see those chunks of stuff that are kind of floating around in our field of view, which is basically just lichen. It's entirely possible that there's nothing in the sample, by the way. I didn't screen it ahead of time. All I can say is I've been pretty lucky with sticks, especially old sticks that are kind of laying around on the ground. Like they broke off of a higher part of a tree, and this stick fits in that category. So there's a possibility that there's nothing in it, but there's also a possibility that it's going to have a bunch of little rotifers and water bears. I haven't seen a lot of them yet, but that doesn't mean anything. Also, sometimes it takes them a little while to rehydrate. So they might show up more frequently as we start scrolling around in here. It's also very likely to be things like nematode worms, and if it's like any of the other streams where we did look at these things as lichens. You know, some mites sometimes show up in them, or little insects. Less frequently, I think. And not seeing a whole lot right now, so fortunately I've got a bunch more sticks, and also a lot more material, so we can always go back and grab another blob of the stew and see if maybe there's something in it that we didn't get in the first hit. So it doesn't really look like there's much of anything moving around in here, which is super weird because there's usually some things. But that's what the hunt is all about, you know? You start, and then you never know what you're going to get. So sometimes you just get nothing. Sometimes it's just bupkis, you know. You're on the losing end of the hunt. And you know, in a worst case scenario where we don't find anything at all, I've got old slides over there with, like, you know, tardigrades and things on them, so I could always rehydrate them and take a look at them, including the very famous water bear known as Tardy B. And Tardy B is a water bear that got drawn by little Juke, who's, I think, still here with us, probably eating her sausage and potatoes. There was 0 in that whole sample. Oh, wait. There's a little nematode worm right there. Yeah. You can see it's squirming about. Sometimes when stuff has been dry for a really long time, it takes a while for the organisms to kind of come out of their dehydrated states. Let's see. Let's see how well this works. Oh, that's a little zoomed in. Let's go the other way. There we go. A nice super high resolution, I think, view of our nematode worm. See it crawling around. It's like, what's happened here? I've been dry for so long. Hello, Samsung TV. Do I use concave slides? No. I just use regular old slides because I'm not used to looking at living things. Most of the time I look at dead things. And so I haven't bought slides with wells in them, but I think that's a good idea. Maybe I can get some in the future. It's just that most of the time I don't, and instead I just don't put a cover slip on. Or sometimes I will put a cover slip on afterwards if I feel like you're around and you're feasting. There's I should be paying attention because I'm hearing followers. And sorry about that if I missed you. And also I see that Icy Yoga asked for Sylvia to draw a picture, but Sylvia's gone to bed. And so I'll either send that points back to you, or when she wakes up, I'll have her draw something and I can stick it in the Discord or in the Sylvia Draws Pictures things down there. So let's see. 3 hours ago, we got followed by Damage Engine, and that was before I started streaming. So, and then Hector and Winks of Daedalus, what a cool name, and Synthlab have followed us. And I should point out that right now we are sitting at 943 followers, which is crazy to me as a number. I started streaming in August, so it hasn't even been a full 6 months yet, and we've already almost reached 1,000 followers, and I'm super excited by that. You know, it's just a number. It's not like 1,000 people are here every time I stream or anything, but it's nice, you know. I know people who've been on Twitch for a lot longer than me who probably have fewer followers than that. And I know a lot of it's probably just attributed to the fact that I have a scanning electron microscope. I think if I was just doing, you know, streams where I was looking for water bears occasionally, I probably still wouldn't have that many people. But it's nice. It's nice that there can be so many people and that are so interested in science, and especially the microscopic world, which is where I focus most of my time on Twitch. Occasionally, my daughter will play Minecraft. We haven't really done one of those streams, or some other game, for a really long time, and that's partly because my daughter Sylvia has not asked me to stream, and I think part of that is also, oh, here's a rotifer. I knew we'd start seeing something sooner or later. She hasn't actually asked me to stream because probably because I haven't been streaming from home very much. What was that noise? Hey, it's Electric Longboard is raiding with a party of 20 people. Hello, electric longboard. Hello, people who came with electric longboard. Um, my name on Twitch is Diatom's Attack. My real name is Dr. Stone, and I'm a professor at Indiana State University. And normally I stream from a scanning electron microscope, but tonight we're getting a little bit of a live action view of some organisms that I scraped from a stick earlier. This stick right here with a knife, and then I put some water into it, and magic happened, and now we have rotifers and nematode worms crawling around in my microscope. So these are sort of like intermittently. I will stream from home occasionally. Actually, it's nice to be able to stream from home because I don't have to wear a mask and don't have to go into work, and it's not even that far away. It's just like the whole process of going out into the world. And instead, most people just stream from home, but most of the time I have to stream from work. So, because I don't have a scanning electron microscope at home. And I don't think that's likely to happen because they're too expensive for me. It would roughly be the cost of my house to buy a scanning electron microscope. And I rather like living in my house, so especially because I have a scanning electron microscope at work. But I don't think I want to trade. If I could somehow have both, that would be great, but I'm short about $160,000. So, it's not going to happen. But I like to be able to stream from home. It's a little more casual, and you can kind of get to see, I guess, the inside of my house a little. And a lot of times my family will participate a little bit, but it's past Sylvia's bedtime, and she started going back to school recently, so that's not going to happen. She's in bed. She's probably being read to by my wife, which is nice. So, if you drop by tomorrow to this same channel and you are interested in lizards, I have good news for you. Our friend in the channel here, Saralosaurus, is a PhD student at Indiana State, and she looks at lizards. And we're very likely going to dissect one of these lizards. And I say we, I mean she's doing it, because once you get the PhD, getting your hands dirty, we don't do that. No, actually, I don't know anything about lizards, really. I mean, other than what I learned in elementary school, I guess. And what Sarah's managed to explain to me occasionally. So, hey, Del. Oh, I totally missed that. I haven't been paying attention to chat. There's so many things that happen when you're streaming, and you're also trying to look in a microscope and carry on a conversation, and then prep samples, and raiders happen, and people follow, and you don't always be able to follow everything at once. And at school, when that happens, I usually have helpers. So when I'm at the university, I can just I have really nice student assistants who will spend time with me when I stream. And we haven't had them around for like a month and a half now. So I've just been trying to keep it pretty casual. And as a result, it sort of takes a while for me to get back to the stream sometimes. But, oh, this is still zoomed in. I'm going to zoom back out so you can kind of see what I see, instead of just seeing a little clip of it. One thing I can say is I have substantially upgraded the video quality from home by attaching my really high-end camera to the microscope. And I feel like it's done a great job of improving what we can look at. Whoa, what are you? It's like a bunch of eggs or something. Maybe. Oh, there's something over here. Crawling around. That's a rotifer, yeah. One of the things I'm always impressed by when I'm watching these stuff move around on streams like this is how strong they are. These little tiny organisms, these are multicellular animals, but they can really just push all this stuff around them. They can push it around. And, stuff that's bigger than they are a lot of the time. There's another nematode here in the middle. Anyway, so if you have questions and I don't see them right away, what I recommend is when you just type it, put like @diatom's attack, and then I'll try to get back to it, and it'll be easier for me to pick out as something I should answer. And just try to be patient, I'm not ignoring you because I don't like you. It's the opposite. I'm ignoring you because I'm trying to entertain a bunch of people at the same time, and the microscope takes pretty much all of my attention because I got to stick my eyes in it to see what I'm doing. And then only periodically do we find things, and then I can look up once I've managed to get that in focus for you. So, rotifers, check. And nematodes, check. Here's another nematode. See it right there. Little worm. And slightly overexposed, but I think I can catch it here. And I might be able to fix that for us. Here we go. Now it's not quite so overexposed. It's a little zoomed in, but it's like you're either too zoomed in or you're not zoomed in at all, I guess. It's not moving around a super lot. It's just the one end of it wiggling out there. Response time is great, though. Okay. Let's see. Oh, yeah, we did see a trichome back there. We were looking for water bears, and so we found nematodes and rotifers. That's the way it goes sometimes. We hope our mycology channel can grow that fast. When are you going to start streaming, Ribozoid? Have you done that and I just haven't seen it? You have a secret? Like, what day? So Delmaximin, yes, those are bedelloid rotifers, and I usually talk quite a bit about them when we have them on the screen, so maybe I'll do that a little bit. But bedelloid rotifers are asexual. They just reproduce asexually, and kind of like the Hydra, which Del has in his streams, they can just replicate quite well. So I think hydras do have like a sexual reproduction option, and the bedelloid rotifers have 0 options for sexual reproduction. They are only asexual reproduction, which is usually a bad sign for multicellular organisms. But they managed to do okay. So Pandemic Watch, hello. Nice to see you here hanging out. Chef Steve 330, hi. What are you cooking? What are you cooking? Can we smell what Steve the chef is cooking? How they look like outer space. Yeah, sometimes. There's a lot of sort of outer space comparisons, I think. In the podcast that I was in for today with my friend A Tiny World, if you check that out somewhere down there, in the Twitter or Instagram, you can watch it, listen to it. It's nothing to watch. You can listen to it on Spotify or YouTube. in the promo, she has me with like a sweater and a hat, and then I'm in outer space, which I wasn't when we started. Uh, but somehow I feel completely comfortable just in a sweater in outer space. So, scale's kind of interesting. Yeah. I start my stream and my wife reads yeah, every night. That's pretty much what happens here. We get a little time for Sylvia to hit the sack, basically, and then Carlin goes and reads to her. I opt to read to her, but she doesn't like it when I read to her because I try to put her to sleep when I read to her. I don't know what Carlin does, but it's like a animated sort of. She does voices for the different characters in the books, and it sounds very exciting when she does it, and I'm trying to not be exciting when I do it. I want her to like conk out, and sometimes after she gets done being read to by Carlin, she wants to get back on her iPad and watch videos for another hour or something because, oh, a rotifer. No? Wait. Yeah, that's a rotifer. He's being very shy, sitting right on the edge of that. Right on the edge of that piece of lichen. Anyway, she doesn't like it when I read to her because I put her to sleep. So, we're doing cool stuff tomorrow. We're going to look at some of Sarah's lizards. She's going to dissect some. We'll see a little bit of their insides. They're, just as a note, they're already dead. They've been dead for a long time. And so it probably won't be very bloody, I'm hoping. But then we're going to probably like cut off some nails, the claws, I mean, and a little bit of skin. And we'll put that stuff in the scanning electron microscope, and then we'll take a look at it. So, Dell says, I use Chatterino to monitor chat while I stream, and I have to separate tab for mentions so I can review them easily. Yeah, so I've got like, I've got a separate tab in here that shows me follows. So like I can see that we got JLock TV and Chef Steve who followed. So thank you guys for follows. You're bringing my total up to 946. We're almost to 950. Hoping that sometime by the end of the week, maybe we'll reach 1,000, and we'll have to have a party of some kind. I can see everything's just like a little behind where I actually am, which is so weird. So, anyway, what's happening? Oh, it's too dark. Is that it? Oh, did this go to sleep? Mm-hmm. Oh, did we run out of battery? I don't think so. It just needs to wake up. Wake up! There we go. You can see I didn't use Olympus batteries. Let's see. Just add water. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's okay. I can just use it on the screen here because of the oops. There's that little rotifer. He's down there hiding. I should say she, because I think it's a female. I think they're all female. I mean, gender's sort of meaningless when you don't have sex, but I think they're actually female. Let's see. So, I can kind of see everything going on here, but the problem is, of course, I can't. It's primarily when I'm looking through the microscope that I can't read the chat. So that's the challenging part. Oh, here's one. It's that one we saw before. It's out on its own. Little rotifers crawling around. Let's see. Boom. It saw me get here, and it's like, that's it. I'm going back into the blur. Oh well. We tried. Anyway, this is sort of a good sign. These are the sorts of things. There's another one of those nematode worms. This is the sort of aquatic environment where we normally would find our water bears, sometimes they're just really low density on the sort of lichen material, and um, it'd be nice if they weren't, but sometimes they're just really super low density, and so as a result, we don't see very much of them. I mentioned before that we've had some streams where we actually had water bears. We weren't just hunting them, but we actually saw a bunch. And I'm sure we could either scrape another stick here, or I might try one more slide before I give up on it. Sometimes I can go through a whole slide or two and not find any, and then the next one, there's 2 or 3 in them. So, part of it's just like, if they're on the wrong side of a piece of lichen when I cross that part of the stage, like there's so much dark space that is outside of the view, and that's because we're using a transmitted light microscope, and as a result, we can't see the other side of the samples. We can't see the side where the water is up, basically, very easily. And we can see through a sample if it's translucent. But we can't see what's going on the other side of a piece of lichen that's here. And so, if we had a different type of microscope, or if we had epiluminescence, we could flip it so we could see what was going on the other side of things. And then we could check out the rest of this area that's all dark. Not an option right now, at least. I do have a stereo microscope at school, and we don't usually use it for much, but it's really nice. But I don't feel justified bringing it home. But I keep saying, one of these days I'll just stream from school and do the stereo microscope. But I kind of feel like, if I have the option to sit down at the SEM, I'm going to sit at the SEM. So, especially for streaming. I think I'd rather stream from the SEM. People would be a lot more interested, I think, in that. That is another rotifer, another bedelloid rotifer. Well, it's trying to do facial recognition on it. My camera. All right. It doesn't have a face. It's a rotifer. Okay, anyhow. Roughly what's the scale here? Everything that we're looking at 100 times magnification, but then my camera is multiplying that by 3. So right now, we're looking at 300 times magnification, sort of. It's an optical magnification, but to give you some sense of the scale, right? So I don't have like a scale bar because it's coming through my camera right now, but I could put like a ruler on here and measure it at some point so that I could have a specific answer for you for like field of view. Most of these things, like a rotifer, are I want to say somewhere around maybe like 200 microns or so. I don't know, that's just a guess. I haven't tried to measure one. But they're kind of in that range. They're pretty big relative to things like diatoms, because they eat them sometimes. Somewhere in the sort of, 100 to 300 range, I think most rotifers would land in terms of micrometers. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see. Yeah, Hydra can reproduce sexually when required. So we did 2 test streams to nail down audio and OBS scenes, and we'll be doing them weekly from now on. But you still need to nail down a schedule. Yeah, that's actually the hardest part for me, was coming up with some sort of a schedule that I could commit to. And for the SEM time, it got a lot easier when when classes started, and then I just sort of came up with a plan, like, okay, these are the times when I'll be in charge of um, the SEM streams, and then the rest of the time, like when I'm doing light microscope streams, I just sort of sprinkle them in, um, and if they're not, if I don't stream 1 week, I don't think anybody cares. So, um, it's for me, it's good to have an option, like something else to do, um, so it doesn't get overwhelming to constantly have to come up with something to put in the scanning electron microscope, um, that's not something people have seen before. So, and I just kind of gave up on that recently and decided I'm going to mostly stream diatoms in the SEM, and then when we come up with something else occasionally, that'll be fine. But and right now, currently, I don't have any problem coming up with something new to look at for the SEM, because I've got a bunch of projects going on. But it can be really challenging to come up with like content for stuff like this to stream. That's not the same thing every time. So, you end up looking around at a bunch of things, and then it's like, well, we did hair once, we did bugs, we've done, not everybody got to see them, of course. We did diatoms the most. Hey, Micah. Can we have a banana for scale? I have a banana in the other room. I don't know that it would work very well as a scale, because I don't think it'll fit. Let's see. Jeffrey Horn says, we do astrophotography over on Clear Skies Network, and I'm seeing a lot of similarities. Well, there's a lot of similarities because, for night sky stuff, you're taking something very small and you're making it very big. It's just that it also happens to be very big and just appears to be very small, right? Because the things that you're imaging are monstrous. They're galactic sometimes. And but to our eye, they still appear very small. And I really love that about, that's my sort of interest in science streaming, is that I can take something that looks small, even if it's not, because I do astrophotography occasionally. I don't have fancy telescopes except for the ones that I steal from the university occasionally. But I haven't managed to come up with a plan to stream the astrophotography that doesn't seem kind of chaotic. So, because it's nighttime and it's hard to get stuff in focus, and I don't have all the high-end technical star tracking stuff on telescopes that I probably would need. I could just do it from my camera, but then I have to be plugged in and there has to be internet, and it's a challenge. So, but I'm glad that there's some similarities, because I actually like to do all those things. In fact, I do a lot of photography when I'm not doing science. It's sort of a thing I do on my own time, and I take a lot of photos of night sky stuff, but also just really small stuff with a macro lens, snowflakes and insects and flower parts and whatever else I find interesting any given time. That is a rotifer. We've gotten a bunch of rotifers now. That is another bedelloid rotifer. Super zoomed in on it right now, so you can see all of its working parts. It's multicellular. You can actually see it kind of digesting a little bit, the stuff moving around on the inside of it. Yeah, lizards aren't generally too gory, so we should be okay. And hopefully less gory than some video games that are probably on Twitch. So I think I'll put a little tag or something to let people know. Let's see. Micah is here, and he says, "Good evening, peoples." Must be between slides we were. And it's nice to see you, Micah. You know, Micah's one of our sort of community builders early on. Donated a lot of subscriptions to people in the channel, as well as his own. And also hangs out quite a bit in the Discord. So we do a little bit of gaming sometimes, play a little Minecraft or something. So Mike is usually around there. So I think I've done more sort of hanging out, talking with him while we played Minecraft than I've actually sort of streamed where he was present recently. Partly because I've been streaming mostly in the afternoons, and I think he's actually got to work when I'm kind of goofing off at work. So nice to see you, Micah. There's another nematode worm. Well, this particular hunt for water bears has not been super successful. Yet. Oh, I was saving this thing I was going to show you for when we found a water bear. But what if we never find one? So in the evenings, the house gets a little bit more quiet. What are you? What is that? It looks like something has ruptured, and its insides are coming out. Not in a good way. Some of the things aren't very capable of me with the knife running over the sample, I suspect. So I might have got something. We're just working our way around the slide, looking for things. The hunt is still on for the water bears. Also, normally when I stream from the lab, there's this constant buzzing going on from the SEM vacuum pump, and we don't have that going on. Instead, you can hear the fan on my computer probably, or something else that's making white noise. Or maybe you hear my belly rumbling. You know, dinner was a while ago. Hang on, new follower who I can't see because I'm looking in the microscope. I want to say thanks for following, but I'd also like to say what your name is. So, what is this? What is this? That, I think, is a water bear. Yeah, he's just not completely woken up yet. There's his little claws, right there. And those are its two back legs, and these are the arms, and that's its head, I believe. And you can see it's just kind of moving around very slowly. His little claws are coming out right there. Oh, I forgot, you can't see the mouse. Down on the bottom, you can see little bits and pieces of its leg are moving. You know what that means? I can showcase the thing. Hey, we found a water bear. Look at this one. There's a sexy water bear right there. That's Tardy B, the water bear in the corner, and we're gonna try to coax this water bear into life by putting sexy, sunburned Tardy B water bear right there next to it, and see what happens. Oh, it looks like he's woken up. When you put a sexy water bear next to another water bear, like Tardy B, look at him. He's like, is that a sexy water bear in the corner over there? Look at him. He just woke straight up as soon as we put that in there. And there you go, right? How many X zoom is this? I think we're still at 300. I think this is 300 times. That, oh, hang on. Tardy B is sitting on the magnifier. Oh yeah, that's like 500 times right there, but that's an optical zoom. Um, the, the microscope's actually at 100x, and then I've optically zoomed it times 5. But you can see our little water bear woke up, and he's crawling right towards Tardy B. He knows where it's at. Look at that. Oh no, I guess he's crawling. He's crawling right there. Swim towards Tardy B. You can do it. I'm just gonna lure him. I'm gonna constantly lure him by moving Tardy B a little farther away. Come on. Come on. Like this. You can do it. Oh, where'd he go? He's sort of crawling towards it now. We're a little too zoomed in, I think. There. Oh, is that too close? Or we look right up in his face. You can see his little mouth feeding tube right there. Yeah? You can see it? He's got a little newt coming off the front of his face. Okay, I'm gonna back out because we're kind of crazy close. And you can see him walking around. Hey, it was a successful hunt. Yeah. Look who's in the corner, little chook. Look who made it. What happened was we put Tardy B in the corner and it woke up. I swear to God. It happened, and there's video of it. I'm not making it up. So, pretty cool, don't you think? We got a little water bear crawling around, naked water bear in a corner. What more could we want? All of our hard work and hunting around on the slide, it eventually paid off. And that's what happens when you use a stick. If I look in lichen and it's on a stick and it's an old stick, like this one that I collected, we watched the video of me collecting it, right? And then I scraped the stick live in the field of view. You guys watched me make the soup that we're looking at right now. And if you use sticks, there's always water bears on the stick. I've tried like tree trunks where there's a bunch of lichen. Never get anything. Never works. I tried looking in mosses. It's never worked. The stick always works. That's what I've found. You just have to look around a little bit. And it also helps if you have a sexy Tardy B in the corner, because she really gets them going, you know? And I should mention this, but little Chook drew that in the corner, right? That's Tardy B. And then they get a beer named after her, right? She's got her own beer line now. She's got, like, you could drink Tardy B beer. What is it called? It's some sort of actual beer with Tardy B on the label. I don't have that graphic, but she's like drinking the beers, right? She's got 6 arms. That's a whole 6-pack right there. Look at that little guy. All right, so, we found it. Roger Gasmus says, is it really kind of transparent? Yeah, it's what we call translucent. That means light passes in through it imperfectly, and we can actually see through it. Transparent, parts of it may be transparent, but it's mostly what we would call translucent, right? You can see through it. Anakin Luke, I put some pictures that Sylvia drew for you already. Why do you keep doing that to me? Let's see. Tea Leaf. Hey, how you doing, Tea Leaf? It's nice to see you here. Usually I see Tea Leaf also contributing to the stream of Mind of a Snail. So I think they are regular contributors there as well. Oh, he's got his little kissy face out. You're facing the wrong way, though. I probably could flip it. Okay, anyway. Little Chook, yeah. So, pretty cool, right? A stout. Oh, there's some getting brewed right now. I can summon Tardy B whenever I want now. That's the best part. I can just bloop, 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 bloop. There she is. And it's animated. That's the best. Don't you guys think? She gave him showed him a little cheek, you know? All right. How hard is it to breed tardigrades? Am I a tardigrade farmer? I don't know. That's a good question. If conditions are good in a sample, they probably will replicate. I suppose it has to stay sort of wet for a while. You don't want the sample to get dried out too quickly, or else they won't be able to find each other. We're really at the edge of this slide. We're almost done with this sample. It was really pushed it all the way to the end of this thing, and we found one. So that's kind of cool. There he is. I didn't lose them, I promise. And I'm marking mentally where I think they are. Let's see. How much does 1 kilogram of tardigrades cost? I don't know. But you know what I have been doing is all of the previous samples where I had water bears in them, I mixed them all together in I have a little bowl over there full of lichen with water bears in it. So when this sample dries out, it'll get mixed with those ones. And then the water bears that are in there that could mate, they might be doing it. And sometime I could probably just wet that, and I think you could actually farm water bears that way. I don't know about how easy it is to breed them. We're sort of in captivity, I guess. But kind of neat. You study math. Now you want Sylvia to draw me mathematics. I've got bad news for you, Anakin. If there's one thing Sylvia doesn't like right now, it's math. She hates it. She hates all the math homework she has to do. I don't know if it's because it's too easy, though. She's 6, she's going on 7, and they have to use a number line, and she's like, what's with this? Why do I need a number line? And then some of the math questions that they ask are what's 8 minus 2? And then she answers it, and then they say why. You have to tell a story around why. So it's that's what it is. So I think that's the part of it she doesn't like. Maybe it's not the actual mathing part, What does it require to get its skin surface shape? It's hard to grasp due to the translucency. So the water bears, so it's sitting also right on the edge of a drying out bubble. A little bit right there. That's why we're getting that distortion. It's on the edge of a bubble. And that's bad for the optics of the camera. And I could probably sort it out by putting a cover slip on, because it'll get rid of the air bubble. The topography of the shape will stop distorting the light. But then I have a cover slip on it. So if I wanted to scrape it off into the bowl with the rest of the stuff, I won't be able to. So Winks of Daedalus said this might be one of the most valuable contents on Twitch. Thank you. There's a lot of microscope streamers, and some of them are here in the channel with us, at least occasionally, and most of them are friends with me, and I usually refer to them as my squad. Or really, we're all a squad, but not just mine. The squad. So here's a list of other people that you might watch if you're looking for microscope streamers. A Tiny World, who normally streams on Tuesday nights, hasn't been streaming for a while because she's been working on her podcast and other things. But she also studies water bears. I mean, not like as a scientist, but as a layperson. And then Pacific Plankton looks at plankton from San Francisco Bay. No water bears, but she looks at a whole bunch of other really cool things that are in the plankton, living organisms, and then moving around very actively in her samples. She's super knowledgeable. And then occasionally she sends me samples, and I put them on the SEM or my light microscope after I process them. So, yeah, that's a good point, Tea Leaf. It's usually the last place you look, right? Before you find whatever it is you need to find. So the shape of a water bear is more like that drawing that the little Chook has there. They're really like, they're shaped kind of like a sleeping bag or a winter jacket. So this one's kind of slowed down. I think it's because I put Tardy B away. But they're just kind of puffy. And then they've got, not sure if that's not also a water bear right there. It's curled up. They're really kind of puffy, and their texture is inflated when there's water around. Basically, the volume of their shape kind of, they get puffed up by the water, partly. And then they, when they get dehydrated, when they go into their tun state, they kind of like, just like a trash bag that's had all of the air sucked out of it. They end up basically curled up in a little ball shape, sort of. Something's right on the edge of that. Look at that. I found another one. I told you, sometimes you're just like out there roaming the countryside, looking for water bears, and you never find them, and then you change samples. 2 or 3 show up. Here's 2. It's prophetic. I said it, and then it happened. And Tardy B's back, I guess. Open Set is one of the people in that list. He's right there. Open Set. Put stuff on his microscope, and then he plays a synthesizer at the same time, which is crazy talk. Because it's not like you don't have enough to do with a microscope in front of you, and then you gotta like entertain people. He also then plays music. Outstanding. If you can't see. Let's see if I turn this camera, which isn't being used right now, that way, and I do this. Oh, I can't. I've got to move this up, and then do that. This. Look, back there. There's a piano behind me. We got a keyboard for Sylvia for Christmas. So I don't think she's going to be playing that while we're actually streaming, though, because I don't think that's going to go well. It's not quality stuff like Open Set plays. It's not ambient. It's more like there's a music that the keyboard came with, and she plays the colored keys like not in the right time with it. And she's very proud of it all the time. So let's just say it's definitely not Open Set quality. But you can watch Open Set. I don't know. He's like free range Open Set. You never know when he's going to stream, but it's always good when he does. So, and then also in that list is Del Maximum. Del's in and out. He usually streams on not Tuesday or Thursday, and the rest of the days are game for him. And sometimes he does gaming, and sometimes he does microscope stuff. And or sometimes he splits it, so you get a little gaming and a little microscope stuff. We do some gaming on here, but it's usually Sylvia doing the gaming, and then I'm making commentary about all the silly things that happen in the games. So and then there's Fizeria. So she's a musician, and she mostly sings and plays guitar and keyboards, and she's got a gorgeous voice and plays great music. And then occasionally she'll sneak a little science in there to her audience, which is nice. Just got a microscope and streams. And then we got this guy Spider ID, who's a European character who streams during the early mornings usually because he's in Europe. But he looks at spiders using a stereo microscope. And he's not really like a person that we hang out with because, you know, he's European and he's on the wrong time schedule. But I watch his streams sometimes and they're great. So you can check all of those out. Those are some great choices if you want microscope-based Twitch streaming. If you want scanning electron microscope Twitch streaming, though, this is the only place for that, really. Occasionally, like, but rarely, the Frecht chemists sometimes will do some SEM stuff, but it's not quite the same. She's not looking at organisms or whatever. So, but she does also sometimes do some microscope work. And if she did it more frequently, I'd put her back up in that list. She's fun to watch anyway. You don't need to see the microscope. She does fun, cool science, chemistry stuff or 3D printing. Mike is giving us the story. Let's see. Are there small enough pipettes to pick up a tardigrade? Yes. And I have a micro manipulator in my lab, so we could actually mount one of those onto the micro manipulator and then just go in and pull up a tardigrade. You can definitely do that. And you could, Anakin, if you really wanted to, like go through and pick all the tardigrades out of that giant pile of lichen I have in the corner over there and concentrate them until you had a kilogram. I mean, I guess it'd be super expensive, though. You could make your tardigrade farm then. Yeah, you could do, for sure. Open said, I have one sample where I just keep finding their molts rather than any living ones yet. Yeah. And soon Sylvia will be playing keys and microscoping at the same time, and she will be ready to be your apprentice. I think she's going to need some musical training. The microscope part, she kind of has down, but I feel like the musical training part needs a lot of work. So what's happened here is our water bear has climbed up into the bubble. You can see it moving around. It's super distorted right there. Super distorted water bear. Now, the bubble is acting like a crazy magnification lens. And, you know, if you were watching OpenSet stream, he might take this and turn it into like a kaleidoscope image with crazy rainbow bubble edge water bears in 6 directions at the same time. I don't have that kind of technology, honestly. You know, here I just have to rely on the bubble itself, I guess, to do the work for me. So you followed all of them. You won't be disappointed, Winks of Daedalus. They're all great. And you know, any of the people who are here hanging out on our channel, also great, and you should follow them. So Little Chook, definitely follow Little Chook. You know, early on we had Anarchy Kitchen, another great person to watch. Got a bunch of really great people. They come in, they hang out. Mind of a Snail's up there. You should definitely check out Mind of a Snail. You know, there's a ton of people. They hang out in here, and then I'm not just saying like you should watch them because I watch them, you know. I spend my time there too. You know, usually if they've got diatoms on their microscopes, I'm definitely there. Or I just show up magically and they start talking about diatoms shortly after I get there, and then I can answer diatom questions, and they think I'm like you know, a demon who appears when you say his name. So because they mention me, and then it's just like, oh, did you mean this diatom? What's just like a special power I have apparently of showing up before people, right when people need me the most, to answer diatom questions. Here's a little nematode squirreling around. Right there. There he is. This one's pretty active. A lot of times when the water starts to dry up like this, because she's just crawling around in there. they'll become a little bit more active because when the water's kind of deeper on the slide, it's hard for them to move around. And then once, look, it's trying to make a face. My camera thinks it's a face. The facial recognition part just clicked on, tried to like figure out what was going on there. Let me get rid of the green box. Can I? Well, I can zoom in. That's one way to get rid of it. Get back here. Look at that nematode worm. Oh, typical. Typical. Right into the bubble as soon as I got it zoomed in. Oh well. Okay. Let's see. So we've been looking around in these samples. We do one more? We can do one more. We'll do one more sample from here. This one's really kind of dried up. Found some water bears on this one. We're 1 for 3, except for there were 2 water bears in that one, so we're like 2 for 3. Although they were all concentrated in one sample, so maybe it's 1 for 3. And then I get this little pipette. I'm just gonna come down here and try to suck up as much of the lichen material as I can that's been hanging out here at the bottom. Look at that. Can you see that? There's our little stew. Here's our little pipette. All of it's concentrated down here at the bottom now. Just put a couple blobs on there. That's a lot. I put a lot on there, so we'll just see if that produces anything. And then when we're done digging through the lichen, which will be after this slide, then I'm going to switch over and do a little bit of looking at diatoms. Let's put this away. And then when it shows back up, we'll pull back out the tardy bee. Okay. You're going to build your own SEM? I think there's plans for that on YouTube. I think people have talked about it. You love tardigrades. You've never seen one live. Well, you have if you were just watching that one that we had while you a couple minutes ago. How about cooking it above 100 degrees Celsius and watch streaming it alive afterwards? The water bears don't die at 100 degrees Celsius. If they're in their tun state, they can live temperatures up to about 300 degrees briefly for short periods. Do you have any idea of how much the engineering is publicly accessible? No, I've never tried to build one. Yeah, that's what Mike was talking about, the YouTube guy. You don't mean to sound like you know what you're talking about, because you don't. I mean, what do we all know about anything? We had giant diatom in our most recent stream. Oh, you did? Did I miss that stream? Did you use some of my images? Or did you just, somebody donated some pictures of them? My microscope comes in later this week. You're excited to hunt for some water bears and diatoms. Beach Ninja, maybe you should consider streaming it. We need more microscope streamers on Twitch, in part because when it gets to the end of my stream and I want to raid somebody, I like to raid other people who are going to do like microscope stuff, because I got all these people here that like the microscope part. That is... What is that? Rotifer. At the end of the stream, then I would have more people to raid, and I could make my squad list bigger, and then, we could all work to help each other out. It would be great. Plus, maybe you could find something else that's kind of cool, and then I could show up and tell you what I think the diatoms are, unless you already know them. Oops, what's that? What was that? It went around the other side as soon as we got here. It was like, nope. No thanks. I don't want to be on your stream. That's a nematode. You can learn most of this stuff pretty quickly just from watching.
The OBS software is a little challenging at first, and it took me a long time to sort of get a groove, get used to talking in front of people because I'm not naturally into the sort of performance aspect of the job. And I like to just, whoa, hello, nematode. It, they got some sort of cool song they've been listening to, they're rocking out to, just totally spazzing out. Um, it takes a little while to sort of get comfortable, not worry about everything all the time when you're streaming. But I think it's pretty rewarding. It's fun interacting with people and being able to share this tiny little stuff crawling around all the time. And you learn a lot because, of course, to present stuff, a lot of times, oops, look at that. Look at that. Boom. Do you think it's sleeping or is it dead? That is for sure a little water bear right there. Pow. You know how I can tell? Even though it just looks like a little blob, right at that focal height, you can see the little claws on the ends of its feet. Oh, it doesn't look like it's living. It looks like it's just kind of hanging out there. Oh, wait. Yeah, I don't think that one's alive. Oh no, I'm wrong. Its little legs are moving just a little bit. I think the water's moving around is causing it to change position. That's not the water bear itself, but its little claws are moving sometimes. So right there is another little water bear. You can see the claws on the ends of its little feet. So you can tell it's a water bear if it has 8 legs. Actually, they have 2 legs and 6 arms, or 8 legs or 8 arms. I know the battery's blinking. It's okay. I've got another one. We'll be all right. See? It moved. It's moving its legs. It's moving. Oh, I need to do that. It's hard to wake up. Its little back legs are just moving a little bit. Hi. We're streaming. Are you going to come in and play piano behind me? No. No? You can play piano. Open Set's here, though. He might judge your piano playing.
No. My head's bad side.
Okay. Well, I tried to talk my wife into playing piano for you. Not very well. I mean, I didn't convince her very well. She had piano lessons when she was a kid. And then we got Sylvia a keyboard, and so they're both basically learning how to play piano again. Here's a rotifer. It's all stretched out. That's a bedelloid rotifer. So you can always tell if you're looking at a water bear by looking at how many legs it has and whether the little legs have claws on the end of them. Those are 2 really good signs. If it's got 8, if it's got 8 distinct legs and it's this size, it's got to either be a water bear or a mite. And if the little claws, there's little claws on the end of each one of its legs, and especially if the back 2 legs are sort of moving together and the other 6 arms or legs, or however you want to call them, are kind of moving independently, that's definitely a water bear. This thing, however, is that's a rotifer that we're looking at right there. You can see it kind of moving around. Rotifers have a clawed foot sort of thing at the end of their body, always. Sometimes it's hard to tell what it is, but it'll come tapered to a point where there's a little claw that they can grab onto, but they only have 1 foot, and it's basically like, they're really like somebody stuffed an organism into a sleeping bag, right? That's basically what they got, like a little claw sticking at the bottom of a sleeping bag that they can grab onto stuff with, and then their head's on the other end of it. So really simple organisms, but they're also capable of withstanding really high pressures,
temperatures, UV radiation, non-UV radiation, like actual radiation, and some really, well, clearly they can handle desiccation as well. And they're usually undervalued. Like, people for some reason think water bears are cute and interesting because they're extremophiles, but rotifers are equally exciting and more prolific typically than the water bears are. In other words, it's easier to find rotifers. I don't know why people don't think that they're as interesting. They're, you know, they're dynamic. They crawl around a lot more. The one thing that they don't look like is a little baby, right? They don't look like a little baby that's crawling around, and so as a result, maybe they're not as cute. And they also got like an antenna sticking up off their head and other things that maybe make them look or seem a little more alien. They didn't look like a bear or some other organism that we might confuse them with that we know from the larger world. So maybe that's why people don't find them as exciting. But for sure, in these sorts of systems where they're really dry, I think that the rotifers are actually really just as exciting to watch. And they've got all kinds of, like, you can see through them same way you can water bears. You can kind of see their inside parts moving and digesting stuff, and I don't know. Uh-oh. I know what that is. Right there. So,
Do you see the little claws at the end of the legs? That is a molt for a water bear. And then you see the little, like, brown circles? Them's the eggs, I think. Those are the eggs of a water bear. So they lay eggs inside their molt, or they molt and the eggs are sometimes inside of them. Yeah, especially when the rotifers are feeding, they look really cool. Okay, so I missed a bunch. Well, I just want to leave it on this for a minute or two. Maybe it's a water bear shadow puppet. Oh, yeah. Tardy B would probably fix that one right up. We don't do song requests, open set, but she plays Green Sleeves and some other song Sylvia really likes from a modern artist. I can't remember what it's called. Dark Side, which actually is really appropriate for me because, you know, the SEM is the dark side. Yeah, so Brainiac 0515 tardigrades, we do have them here. I don't think Carlin can play Beethoven yet, and neither can Sylvia. If you don't mind me asking, Alan MD asks, how much was the microscope? This microscope is a Leica. The model is a DM2500, and the base model, probably with just the normal objectives on it, would be something like $12,000. The camera that normally sits on it up here is another $5,000 with the software and the camera and the hardware that goes to the computer. And then the objectives that I have are really high-end objectives so that we can get some really gorgeous looks. We're looking actually through the crappy objective on my scope. The 10x objective is the worst. If that gives you any idea of how good the objectives are on this microscope, this is the worst one. This is the absolute worst objective on the scope, categorically. So, and it's still pretty good. But I have the ability to use differential interference contrast, which we'll look at when we look at the diatom images in a bit, when we start doing diatom stuff. So yeah, altogether, this microscope's somewhere in the realm of, like, if you get the university discount for purchasing it, which I do, I think it was something like $29,000-$30,000, and then the software and everything else, right? So it's expensive. How many optical microscopes is an SEM worth? So an SEM is about $160,000. So 5, roughly, of these would get you an SEM, right? No, 20, no, 5, 6, 7, 8. somewhere around 8 of these would get you an SEM. And then you'd have to get a sputter coater, which is another $10,000, and then you'd have to get like the nitrogen, the gold targets, or whatever you want to use. I guess you could use something else, and the lab space, and the filaments for the SEM, and then probably a maintenance contract, which also cost about $10,000 a year. So upwards of maybe like $190,000 a year, unless you already know how to do the maintenance, in which case it's probably more like $160,000 a year, something like that. Okay, yeah, those are the eggs. Let's see. You're gonna go now. Okay. Newt Newt. We'll see you later, Anakin. Maybe I'll get Sylvia to draw you some math stuff. Let's see. You hear that, chat? Those are the worst ones. Yeah. We'll look at the other stuff from the when I switch batteries, to the other camera battery. Rotifers have a cool name. Water wolf. Water. Oh, they need like a cool name. I see what you're saying. Yeah. That's how much he spent, and he gave you free Twitch education. Yeah, I guess. I didn't spend any of the money. It's university money. I mean, I brought the money in to spend, but in some cases. Yeah. Unusual comments I get from people are when folks think they have saws in their heads to grind things up. They just have like little... mouth parts. But you can tell that's a rotifer. Sorry, a water bear, because it's got little claws on the end of the feet. And it's a molt because there's nothing inside of it except for those eggs, right? So we could put those in our pile of things. Here's another rotifer right there. We could put that in our pile of things, and then hopefully it will make little water bears. They take something like 10 days or 12 days for water bears to hatch from the egg state. And I don't know if that's like once they get hydrated or they have to stay hydrated for 12 days. But, some of the water bears actually give live birth. I saw somebody's YouTube page, Jams Germs or something, where they actually had footage of water bears that Pacific Plankton sent to me. And it was giving live birth to water bears, which I didn't realize some of them do. They don't all come out of eggs, or maybe they keep the eggs inside their body until they hatch and then they molt, which is kind of cool. I don't know which species do that versus which ones just sort of lay the eggs and leave them in the molts to sort of fend for themselves. And we also saw, in a previous stream, we saw some sort of vampiric organism that had moved into the molt of that's a nematode worm that's pushing that junk around. Sometimes you just see the junk move around and you're like, okay, there's something living in there. Don't know what it is yet. And if you wait long enough, whatever's pushing stuff around will pop out. So we can mark down. We found water bears, a number of them, rotifers. So I think we've seen 3 water bears, a bunch of rotifers, some nematodes. Haven't seen any mites yet, although we have seen those in previous streams looking at lichen. And then pretty limited number of organisms, but I think it says something about how hard it is to live in this kind of environment that dries up and then only gets wet basically when rain comes in. And rainwater basically... Oh, there's a rotifer that's got his little mouth parts going. Let's see if I can get that perfectly in focus for you before my camera battery dies. Boom. There you go. And you can see that the little cilia on their corona, which is the part of their mouth at the top that makes like a little crown or ring, and then you can also see they have like a little internal part that's sort of moving around in there. I think that's actually their at the front end of their feeding apparatus. It's like grinding up food. And then you can actually see this sort of green stuff moving through the intestinal tract there. And you can also see they can kind of pull their head back inside of their body. So they put that little spinning part out there at the end. It kind of like flops open, and then the corona part at the top then moves around, and we can zoom in like crazy on it if we wanted to. I presume we do. So you could see all those little moving bits. No, I left it on 100x, and I mentioned this is like the worst objective that we have on the microscope, but there's a reason why I did that. Even though it's not the, there's another rotifer coming in, crimping its style right there. Yeah, I can really see that it's like two little wheels spinning, and that's normal for most rotifers. They have kind of two little, they're not really spinning, but they look like they are ciliated parts. And the reason that I did that is because even though the magnification isn't that great and the optics are a little bit worse than the other ones, what we're looking at is very large, and the depth of field, as I'm saying that, it goes out of focus. It's very challenging to get a lot of the organism in focus at the same time when they're large and the magnification's large. So what I've done is just leave it on 100x, and then I use my optical zoom to make it bigger. And that means that we don't lose the depth of field. So my intention for that is actually not to like stick you guys with the crappy, low key, not great optics, but rather to, because we're looking at big organisms, we don't need to see like just the surface detail in high res. And so bigger organisms actually look a little bit better like this. Also, I have the camera, I have the relief jacked way up by turning the diaphragm down to a very small diameter, and kind of like an f-stop on a camera. What it does is it puts more of the image in focus at once. So I could actually open that diaphragm up, and it would actually put a little bit less of that in focus at the same time. But I'm trying to avoid doing that, right? I'm trying to make it so that you can see as much of the organisms. And then they're both up there at the top curling their this is considered nudity. It's its mouth parts. Okay, so let's see. I'll try to come up with something better than microslug. Yeah, or silly saw. Silly saw. Sorry, when I'm laughing, it moves the desk around. Roadie friend, clawed wolf, turds with multiple mouths, a sleeping bag with a claw. I don't know. Oh, it's a joke. What did one paramecium say to the other? Silly you later. Yeah, it's like, get in my mouth. What's really funny about the rotifers is, they're spinning those corona, the cilia, up at the top around, and you can see the particles being pulled towards their mouth right there, right? So when I hold it just right, you can actually see the little particles getting sucked towards their mouth, and some of them going in their mouths. Occasionally, there'll be particles that are a little too big to go in their mouth, and when they spin it around like that, the particle just like hit them right in the face. But unfortunately, because they're creating little gyres, it'll just keep hitting them in the face. It'll just like spin around and hit them in the face over and over and over again. It's hilarious to watch sometimes. But you really get a sense of how much they can draw all of the surrounding water towards their face by just moving the cilia around. They basically create a little current, and it pulls all the stuff towards them, and then they can either opt to consume stuff or reject it, right? So if they pull dirt into their mouth, they don't want to eat that, right? So they can reject stuff back out their mouth. But a lot of times they just sit in there and chomp on it because it's mostly organic debris. So pretty cool. It's a pretty cool way of looking at things, I think. So yeah, it's basically convection, right? They don't actually suck the water. It's just movement. And then and some particles basically get drawn into their mouths because the gyres are on both sides of their heads. So there's always going to be a part of it that's basically moving straight at their mouths, right? And then they just sort of soak it up. It's pretty cool. We are more intimate with this rotifer than we'll ever be with another human being. Maybe. I mean, you can see through it. and uh, and you can watch it eating. If only it was crying at the same time, you know, then it would be pretty intimate. If it was eating and crying, we could make a separate tag for that on Twitch. You know, rotifers eating and crying. Um, so we have this one, and you can see occasionally the other one kind of pokes its head out over here on the side. But it's pretty cool, right? You can get really close to these. Watch the sort of stream of stuff going into their mouths, and um, but like I said, I think they're really interesting to watch. If we waited a couple of days and we kept the sample wet instead of letting it dry out and then get wet again, one of the things that would happen is other ciliates would start to show up in the sample because they're here. They're just in some sort of really persistently dry state, and we might start to see amoebas, and I've seen a bunch of colpoda. They show up, and then basically conditions get bad when there's um, a bunch of breakdown of organic matter. Then some of the ciliates will show up because they are scavengers and they like to eat decaying matter. And they don't do very well when there's sort of oxygen-rich conditions, but when it starts to basically get um, decay going on, it consumes a bunch of the oxygen through bacterial respiration, and then the environment will turn to their favor, and they'll also then sort of show up. So if you watch sometimes on OpenSet streams, he has samples that he's kept for a while, you know, like a couple of days or a week or something, and he's taking samples from it multiple times, and then you can see all this bacteria in this in the material. You know, these are dried out for the most part, and it takes a while for the bacteria to get concentrations high enough that they can start to do a bunch of damage to the material. But if we waited long enough and we just watched this one stream, they would show up. Hey, here's another water bear. We found one. I can see it crawling through this material, and I can tell it's a water bear again because oops, let me jump back out. He's crawling through this pile of junk in here. One, it's bigger than the other water bear. The other two water bears that we saw crawling around. It's in this pile somewhere. I think it's behind this block. You can see that bit moving right there. I think he's right. Yep, there he is. You can see his little claws. Right inside there, you can see his little claws moving. There he goes. Now he's coming out. Come on out. Come play. Nope, he's back on the other side of that block of junk, the lichen. But this is what happens when you're trying to find water bears on a microscope. This is always going to happen. They're in a three-dimensional landscape, and they're going to crawl around, and they're looking for food, right? They're just exploring. Some water bears don't even have eyes. Just walking around in their landscape, they're kind of aimlessly clawing around, and looking for material they can consume or whatever, a mate, something, right? They find each other, they find food, but they're always going to be sort of moving around in that three-dimensional landscape. So Wednesday's in here somewhere. It's unfortunately also sitting right on the edge of a bubble, so we're getting a bubble distortion as well. But I could pick it out because when it was crawling around in there. Oh, you think we should call Tardy B? We pull up Tardy B? I have one kid and she's sleeping right now, yeah. But she's on the other side of the house, so there's no chance that I'll wake her up. She sleeps like bricks too. Like, we watch movies outside of her room in the upstairs living room often, and she never even wakes up. So we've got Tardy B out. You think maybe he'll come out and play? All right, so rotifers remind me of tunnel boring machines. Yeah, like we drive a rotifer to the center of the earth in a movie with somebody who clearly doesn't understand how hard it is to bore to the center of the earth. You like Silly Saw? Yeah, I mean, that's a good name for him. I think maybe they probably wouldn't like it. Was it just excavating? Oh, evacuating. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sometimes they poop. Uh, I moved before we watched it, before it became a poop stream. Maybe I can go crawl around a little bit and I'll come back. Because this one has this really distinctive little round blob next to it, and maybe the water bear will have worked its way out of that disastrous pile of lichen that it's in and moved towards an edge, or completely moved off of it. Let's see. If I go backward, here's that blob. It's a little, almost dead center, a little bit to the left. Okay. So I'll just have to try to remember where we are on the slide, and then I'll come back there and see if that water bear has worked its way out of a pile of junk it's in. That's a rotifer down there. See him? Crawling around with his 1 foot. Oh, it's thick in here. And the thick with the K, not the 2 C's. We're like a little bit, what? Oh, it's a nematode. A little bit more than halfway through the slide in terms of like scanning it. This stuff is really too dense for us to find anything. If it's in there, it's gone for good. Because I don't think we'll be able to observe it. We did get to see a really cool water bear egg inside of a molt. That's a rotifer. And then the battery's just been blinking this whole time, but you can see why I didn't change the battery back then, because it's still blinking and it's still working just fine. I think I can clear it. Maybe? Let's see. If I do this, I guess the blinking battery is stuck. I can get rid of that. It's just stuck on there. I probably can find a way to turn off the display, but the battery might be more challenging. To go deep into the menus and find that thing. There's probably a way to turn it off, though. Of course, then how would I know my battery was dying? And then I would just be talking and rolling around on the slide, and so maybe it's a good thing. Well, I think we've actually reached the end of the slide, because that's the edge of the water bubble. Just like a little part of it over here that's still underwater. Alright, let's go back to the middle. We're in here somewhere. Oh, I know where we are now. What's going on? Nematode. Here's that distinctive little blob we were looking at. Oh, there's a little tiny ciliate moving around in the background right there. And a water bear is still nested inside of that pile of junk. There it is. Okay. Well, I think we'll give up on our water bear hunt. We did a great job. We found a bunch of water bears, I think, in that set of stuff. There was at least 3 or 4 in there. We'll get rid of the tardy bee. And sometimes you poop too. Yeah, we all poop. That's the way things are when you eat. It's nearly Wednesday. Well, that's true. What would be great is if I was at the end of my stream, and then it like went to Pacific Plankton stream or somebody else's. But I don't think it's gonna happen today because Tuesday's the day Dell doesn't stream, unless OpenSet's gonna get on. But I wasn't really ready to finish anyway. I wanted to look at some of this material that we got from Pacific Plankton. And I made these slides for her, which I'm going to send to her. I've got a whole bunch of them ready here to send. I have to figure out which ones I want to send. I want to get you some really nice ones. And then I'll keep the kind of junky ones, because I can always make more. So we're zoomed out, as I mentioned, sort of really far away from the material. When we're looking at, this is a material that was prepped from samples that have not been digested. So this is from what I call San Francisco Bay 8, which is the 8th sample that Pacific Plankton sent me. And it was collected in late December, so last year, but like recently last year. And we can get a good look at some of these things. That there is a tintinid. Again, we are not by any means, we're at the second worst lens, second worst objective on my SE, or on my light microscope. So we are still quite a ways away from some of this stuff. And one thing that you'll note is that some of these diatoms look like rainbows. They have these really bright colors associated with them, like this guy. That's a Castanodiscus. And that's not real color. Those are physically created by light passing through the silica skeleton, but it's glass. So they're not real colors. They're like optically generated from structural components in the diatoms that are interfering with the light, kind of creating that color. And this one's got like a rainbow pattern to it, but you can see it's just like on one side where the diatom's sort of sloping. And it's not a real color. You'll see blues. I saw some purples. You know, if it's got brown stuff in it, that's probably a real color. Like this one though, like that's blue, right? That diatom looks super blue. It's not really blue. That's again just the physical sort of optical coloring makes them look that way, right? So what's the question? Can the diatoms be crushed? Yes, of course. You can see right next to this one's a fragment, and down here's a fragment. So they definitely can get crushed. You know, if you smush them. So the bigger ones are actually more likely to get crushed than the smaller ones, actually, because they got more surface to crush. They're in the comminution size. It's kind of hard to crush the little ones because they're smaller than anything we could crush them with. There's an isthmia. Cool little isthmia. Well, they're not very little, but that one. Let's see, for you guys, the bottom part of that is one valve, and the top part that's shaped exactly like it is another valve, but there's girdle bands that are wrapped around it, and they're extending out past the edge of the valve, which means it probably separated from cell division relatively recently. Look at that one, that's like purple and blue. Those are all fake colors produced by optics. Here's a Chitoceras. There's a chain of them. So as I mentioned, these are not digested material. This is material that hasn't been treated with anything. So you were talking about poop. Here's some poop. These little brown things that you're seeing, those are all turds. Those are probably turds of zooplankton. And here is another tintinid, lorica. So you can see they have really cool kind of structure to them. Sometimes they will use diatoms in their skeleton structure. So Thalassionema here, a little colony of Thalassionema. Most of these things are Thalassiocyra or Coscinodiscus. That's a datillum right there. Secretly been learning marine plankton by watching and learning from Pacific Plankton, and also from, I guess, trying to figure out what it is we're looking at sometimes. That there is a colony of Skeletonema, for example. Diatoms all have two valves. That's in their name, two parts. Diatom means two parts. It's neat to see them with light. Well, normally we see them with darkness, with electrons on my streams. In the scanning electron microscope, we will be looking at lizards tomorrow, which we normally see with light. So, everything's in opposite mode right now. So some more of those sort of interference colors on this, I think that's probably at Thalassiocyra. You can see that's got like this sort of interference pattern on it. But if we were to get close to that, oops, did I lose it? Oh, I think that's the same one. If I were to get close to it, you see the color just disappears. Or actually, now it has a little banding around the outside margin, right? Because it's not real color. And if I zoom back out, now it looks just pale, right? But that's the same diatom. Now it's blue. Pale, blue, right? So that's just showing you that they don't actually have color. If we were going to look at it at 40x, I can play with some things on the optics a little bit. Turn up the brightness, and we could really zoom in if we wanted to then. Like look very closely at the diatoms. Here you can see the surface structure, and I have news for you. We still aren't at the best optical objective on this microscope. There's still another level where we could really get close and look at the surface structure of that diatom. But I have to put oil on this slide, and then basically everything gets ruined because when we're looking at an oil, we can't switch back out to not oil. So once you're committed to it, then you're basically stuck with it. So I'm trying to avoid doing that just yet. We can eventually look at some things in oil immersion. Here's a datillum with both of its spines present on both valves. This one has been the home of something. That is a piece of Camplidiscus clypeus, which is a benthic diatom that I node to species. Here's a sponge spicule right here. Very clear. And I can tell it's a sponge spicule because I know something about sponge spicules, which is that they always have an opening through the middle of the battery finally died. All that blinking. They have a little bit of a hole that runs through the middle of the silica all the time. And see how easy that was? I just switched the battery. No biggie. And so we can, if we zoom in on it, we can see that what's called an axial canal that runs through the middle of the sponge spicule. Pretty cool. Okay. Sarlosaurus says, I may study color patches in lizards, but I'm still learning quite a lot about visible and UV light. It's a really complicated subject and so cool. What color is it? It's not a color. It's glass. So it's just transparent. And the optics, like this thing, there's an optic that gives it the color, but there's no real color. It's just like if you were to look at it straight on in well-lit conditions in perfectly reflected light, it would just look clear. I mean, it would have no color at all. Yeah, it's like a prism. That's exactly right, Sundry. It's just basically interference. They're interference structures, and they make it look like it has color even though it doesn't. So um, there are some things with green in them, like this guy right here has some green in them, and I would actually argue that that is real. That green that you're seeing in that thing is real. It is not a byproduct of it is not a byproduct of the light. Let me do that. That is real color, and the reason that I know that that's real color is because those are the remnants of their chloroplasts right there. So that is a diatom, and it just has a little bit of remnant of chloroplast present in it. Probably that diatom is dead, but the chloroplasts are still in place, even though it's been sitting in a refrigerator in the dark for weeks before we, well, a couple of weeks before, since we looked at it. Now it's preserved in an epoxy, and so it will forever have dead chloroplasts hanging out in it. So, oh, you're talking to Pacific, yeah, about the lizard skin. So there's some lizard skin aspect. A couple of streams ago, we looked at this exact diatom in the SEM. This guy, no doubt, is Cosinodiscus, and it had that same sort of structure to it, right? So if you just scan through my like Twitter feed or SEM pictures from Instagram, you'll see that same diatom zoomed in on just the central area right there. And the picture looks something like that, right? Except it's SEM and not light microscope, but all the same structures are there. That's one of the cool things about, oops, I need to zoom out here. One of the cool things about, I want to undo, yeah. Looking at things between the SEM and the light microscope is we can kind of bounce back and forth, and you see some structures, and then you go, oh, I see. This is that thing. This is that component that I was seeing in the SEM, and it actually looks like this in the light microscope because of, you can't resolve everything clearly. So that little diatom that we saw with the chloroplast in it, I think is a pseudonychia. I think these are pseudonychia right here that we're seeing with the stripy things on them. And here's a Thalassiocyra. You can see some of those cool interference patterns on those as well. Those structures on diatoms used to photosynthesize. Chloroplasts are the optical components, the sort of physical things that cause color. People have done some analysis on them by looking at the sort of 3D structure and the way that it changes and focuses the light and where the diatoms put their chloroplasts, and they think that they may be using the skeleton as sort of a lens, that there may be some advantage to that optical color sort of look that they're creating. It's not real color, but the interference patterns do create an issue for them. So there was a bunch of people that followed that I haven't mentioned, and I feel like I should. Stretching back for quite a ways here. So we talked about Chef Steve an hour, 2 hours ago. Jeffrey Holm, thank you for a follow. A May in the Life, Evasive Bugger, Roger Gasmus, who was chatting a little bit earlier, Disaster Robot, Brainiac, Der Klein Schatten, and Stug Shunt, and Shane in 98C. I know that Shane. I know that person. And the Gumpy. So all these people have followed. Hey, Shane, if you're there in the chat, it's nice to see you. He follows me on Instagram, and we're friends from back in the day. I think that's probably the same Shane. He made an app called Flyover Country, which is really famous and really interesting, looking at geology when you're flying around in a plane, or back in the days when we used to travel before COVID.
you could just, wherever you go, your phone would tell you what the underlying geology was and also interesting things about it. And a really cool app you should consider looking at if you have a phone and you study geology, or you're interested in just like what kind of cool geological things are around you. Um, a really neat tool. So
Let's see, we're kind of zoomed out. I need to switch the screen to this one so I can kind of see what these things are. Oh, it's a plagiogramma or something. Some sort of bedelphoid. That's cool. Oh, maybe it's a triangle-shaped diatom, but it doesn't look like it. You didn't know I was on Twitch. I keep it as a closely guarded secret by constantly mentioning it on Twitter, I guess. Not as frequently talk about it in other places, but I kind of sneak it in now and then. I very rarely talk about it on Instagram, but a lot of the pictures that we put on the Instagram page, Shane, from the SEM Lab, which I know you follow that page, they come from live streams. They come from we'll stream, I'll take a picture and then I'll colorize it. Here's a bunch of those. That's the Pseudonychia chain right there. We have a whole colony of Pseudonychia in their life position. And you can see they still have their chloroplast in them still, right? It's the same organism we were looking at. Some of them still have chloroplast trapped in them forever in the epoxy. So what we're looking at, chai, is diatoms, and they are a type of organism that lives in this case, these are from San Francisco Bay. So they make a skeleton, and we're looking at their skeletons. So this is the siliceous skeleton of a diatom. It's a type of algae. They're responsible for about 30% of the oxygen that's generated on planet Earth every day. So when you breathe, about 1 in every 3 of your breaths are oxygen that was generated by diatoms. And I study diatoms because they also respond to their environment. And I try to use that to reconstruct past environments, because they leave their fossils behind. And just like we can use the fossils of other larger organisms to tell us something about the past, diatoms can tell us something about the past as well. So if you're really interested in that part, I've got some stuff you could read. But what we're looking at is mostly the skeletons of diatoms. There's some other things that are sort of mixed in here now and then. That's an interesting diatom. I think it's Datillum. Yep. There's a right here. That's a Datillum in valve view. So you're looking right down the center of the valve, and you can see that they have a triangle outline. This little thing that's next to it, that we're looking at right there, is actually a grain of pollen from pine. That's a pine pollen grain. And you can tell a little bit their structure is kind of colliculate, or what do they call that? Reticulated on the surface. And then when you get them at the right focal height, they look like Mickey Mouse. It's an easy way to tell that you're looking at pine pollen. So yeah, if the light focus is right and they're in the right angle, basically it will focus it into an area and probably alter the light character. So people think that, the people who don't study algae or plants probably don't realize that all light's not the same, not equally valuable for organisms. They have specific ranges that they like, and depending on the organism, the range and color, the spectra of light, actually is helpful for them. So sometimes, oh, there's a cool thing. That's a diatom. I don't know what that is. That right there, some kind of diatom. And then to its left is another diatom. I think it's left for you guys, yeah. And then to the right is a radiolarian. Wait, A silica flagellate. That's a silica flagellate, I think. Another type of marine organism. Those ones really do look like a cage of some type. This is plant material, for if you're wondering what's this junk. That's all plant material. I should zoom out. Sorry. And that's a turd right there. Some sort of copepod turd, probably. There's a Chaetoceros. This is another colony of diatoms. Some diatoms live solitary life. Some live in these really cool colonies. This is Chaetoceros. So it always lives in colonies. It looks like a bug, but those are actually, the things that you're seeing are actually called setae. They're little hollow tubes that extend out from the valve, and they can put their chloroplasts way out into those to improve the area over which they're consuming light. So, let's see. I think Pacific Plankton's doing a great job of handling my question and answers, even though she's got intermittent access. What is circle things with cells inside? Those are diatoms. Yeah, that's not cells. Those are actually just the cell wall. The skeleton of the diatom has little circles in it. They're a single-celled organism. Yep. And you're just looking at the surface structure. Hey, Dangling, how you doing? These little circles that you're seeing, those are actually little holes in the skeleton of the diatom. And if you really want to see what those holes look like, we can put them on the scanning electron microscope. And there's pictures of that. If you are on a PC, you can scroll down, or you can go to the Instagram page. And I think there's a command for that we could throw in there. I talk about it quite a bit. Oops, I put tardy B in there by accident because I'm on the wrong thing. I want to do I want to do that, but I don't want a tardy B to show up because she happens to be on my command key for the number 1. That's another cool Chaetoceros, a different one. So the angle of their spines and the size and width of the valves kind of have an impact on the shape that they make. And these large chunks are just debris. That's sand and silt. Sometimes that's an Ellerbeckia right there. That is Ellerbeckia's sole, I believe. We sometimes see large stacks of those in samples. I bet if I zoomed out, because we've been in on a 40x for a while, we can find some. I think that's actually probably a stack of Ellerbeckia right there. And then that's something different. Not sure what that is. It's a long spines coming off the face. So I zoom back out to 40 to 20x. I should change the filter to match it so we get the cool magic coloration. Here's some of those rainbow colors that we see in those Koskin discus. There's a little silica flagellate, and then next to it, an Odontella of some type, Odontelloid. That one looks like a little trash can, or spaceship, or something. Kind of cool. That's a diatom. And let's zoom back out. Sometimes hard to remember all the things I have to remember for controls. Okay, oh, there's a big stack of Ellerbeckia right there. I like to call them cookie stack. Like somebody who stacked up a bunch of Oreo cookies. My daughter loves Oreo cookies. Here's an example of that. Really large Castanodiscus with a bunch of little holes we were talking about. Sometimes they're enormous, sometimes they're small. So these two that are side by side are the same species. That's because when diatoms replicate, they form inside, one cell forms inside of the other valve, and that means that they fundamentally have to get a little smaller. Half of the diatoms get smaller and smaller and smaller every time they replicate. And as a result, we end up with a size series for diatoms that gets smaller and smaller. See how cool that looks? It's got like a really cool little like optical coloration going on where you have like some parts that are clearer than others. That's because the valve that's underneath it is turned like half a degree. And so the overlapping sectors of that thalassiocera then interfere with each other, and you end up with that cool sort of optical coloration that you're seeing. And this one that's next to it's even cooler, right? Bright blue color. And it's just got a whole bunch of little holes. Well, let's zoom in. Whoa! Whoa, whoa. We're being rated by paleontologizing. 128 viewers. Hello, viewers. I want to welcome you to the channel. We spent the early part of our stream looking for water bears successfully. And the latter half of our stream, we've been looking at diatoms and other organisms from San Francisco Bay. And these are samples that Pacific Plankton sent me. She's here in the channel, and she streams on normally on Wednesday and Thursday. This week she's out doing other things, so she won't be streaming. But I want to welcome you all in. We're looking at organisms that were alive a couple of weeks ago, and they're all dead now. So it doesn't quite count as fossils. They're in the sort of sub-fossil range. Some of them still have like living bits in them. I usually draw a line between things that are fossils and things that aren't fossils based on whether or not they still stink. And I will guarantee you that these things still stink. They are still what I would call subfossils. So I want to welcome all those raiders in, and also paleontologizing. It's nice to see you, and all your crazy dinosaur emotes. There's so many. Let's see. Do diatoms get permineralized? That's a great question. I actually have some diatoms in one of these boxes. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 shelves full of diatom boxes of slides, but they've been replaced by pyrite. They can get replaced. They get permineralized, and a lot of times the replacement still leaves the diatoms perfectly in their original structure. So they look like a diatom, except for they're opaque. Now, these ones are opaque because they still got organic junk in them, but the fossil ones will still be opaque. And you can only tell it's a diatom basically because of the shape or the outline. But if you put them in an SEM, what you'll see is basically the diatom frustule, and everything in it is pyrite, which is pretty cool. So the really old stuff, especially if it's exposed to salty conditions, and also you need sulfur for reducing conditions. But that's a good question. They also sometimes will get framboids. So I don't mean to throw a bunch of technical terms. You probably know what those things are, paleontologizing, but the pyrite crystals form little, they look like raspberries or something, so they'll get framboids of pyrite sometimes that will start to cluster on the surface of them. It'll distort their appearance. But ooh, that guy's really big. All right. Sorry, my cat Wednesday really wants to get in on the scene. I guess she's here to talk to the raiders. She wants to see, what are we looking at? What are we looking at? You want to look in the microscope? No? You want a treat, don't you? I didn't bring any treats. Everybody say hi to Wednesday. She's going to get down here in a second before she starts getting crazy and starts scratching me. All right, Wednesday. Good girl. Let's see. Seems this water bear something. Oh yeah, she wants me to give her pets and treats. Let's see. Thank you for saying you always enjoy my streams. I enjoy talking about diatoms, of course, and other things. On my stream tomorrow, I should point out, today we're doing late night stream with the light microscope, just hanging around looking for water bears. Earlier we found some. from lichens, and I went through the whole process of the whole collection, and we sampled the stick, and then we found the water bears. Um, but tomorrow we're going to be dissecting a lizard on 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 Twitch, and my friend Sarah, who is in the channel as Sarah Lasaris here, is going to be doing the cutting. And then, so for people who are interested in dinosaurs, maybe you're interested in what the inside of lizards look like. I don't know. But then we were going to some of the parts that we cut from the lizard, we will put into the scanning electron microscope, and then we'll look at them in the actual scanning electron microscope, so we can see some of the structure of the skin of the lizard, and also some of the details that you wouldn't be able to see very readily without a scanning electron microscope. So pretty cool. Wednesday. That's enough, honey. You want back up here? Okay. She's just being crazy right now. She gets a certain time of day, and then it's like cat time. Yeah, thanks for handling some of those questions for me, Pacific. And also, Sarah is going to do all the hard work associated with the lizard stuff. Once it gets into the scanning electron microscope, then I can talk a little bit about the stuff, but I'm still going to probably make her do all the work. So Sarah's a PhD student at Indiana State, where I'm a professor, and she took some classes with me before. So, but I don't study lizards, and she's a biologist, and I'm a geologist. So even though I also study things that are biology. So yeah, it's crazy hour for my cat. Anytime it gets this sort of hour, she'll pester us until someone gives her treats. So it will be interesting to see through the scanning electron microscope. Primarily, what I do when I stream is time in the scanning electron microscope. So if you're interested in seeing that, typically we stream, I think I'm going to stick with the same schedule for the spring semester, but I'm not positive. But typically I stream Wednesdays and Saturdays, 1 to 3, from the scanning electron microscope. That's Eastern time. So if you're out in California, like paleontologizing is, it's a little early in the morning. But sometimes the streams will then carry on until I say 3, but it's usually like 4 before the thing is over, sometimes even later, because we got cool stuff in there. I don't want to give it up usually. So we'll be doing the SEM stream on Wednesday. We'll probably do another one on Saturday, and that's just sort of my regular pattern. This sort of night streams are very irregular. I get a little time on the light microscope occasionally, and where I'm not, overwhelmed with putting classes together or whatever else it is I do in my day, and or I just want to relax a little bit and do some sort of casual streaming from home, because as I was mentioning earlier, it kind of sucks to always have to stream while I'm at work. But I don't have an SEM at home, so we have the light microscope streams when I'm here, and I'll talk about whatever's on my microscope. It's usually diatoms, but as I mentioned, we were hunting for water bears and rotifers earlier, and nematodes, and right now I just thought, well, we're getting kind of close to the end of the stream, but I also wanted to take a look at some of these samples that Pacific Plankton sent me, and pop them up on the screen for people. So Tropical Geek, hello. Looking forward to a sweet lizard collaboration. Me too, especially because I don't have to do any of the cutting and dissecting part. I was a little worried about it, actually. That it would be gory, but I think they're partially mummified dead lizards, and so probably they won't be very gory. But if you're interested in it, you should definitely check it out. We'll have the whole dissection part going on in the first part of it, and then we'll switch to the SEM once we have materials to look at, and then we'll have to sputter coat them and stuff. Let's see. Yeah, you guys are talking. That's great. I don't know anything about the lizards, so you just have to ask Sarah. That's fine. Do they have to be dead for the scanning electron microscope to work? Well, the scanning electron microscope works with a vacuum, um, and that usually kills everything. And then we also have to coat things in gold, usually to get a good image out of them. And if you weren't dead from the vacuum, the gold coating probably is going to kill you. So those two things together usually lead to us only looking at dead things in the scanning electron microscope, or recently dead things. Um, there is a environmental SEM on my SEM. Like I can switch it into an environmental mode, which is low vacuum, but it probably kills stuff. It's still a vacuum, and even like bugs and things that can kind of handle a vacuum for a little while, probably would kill them. So yes, I'm gonna go just say yes, although there's probably a few exceptions to that. Um, right. Lizards are already dead. Yes, there's some blue bellies. This is cool. Um, Hopefully you'll check it out. Part of the reason Sarah wants to look at them is to try to see if there's some differences in the skin where the pigmentations are different. So, I'm just kind of excited to do it because we got something different to put in the SEM. And also, I like to collaborate with people, so it'll be fun to look at some of Sarah's stuff. But, and plus, I probably won't have to do all the talking, which is also nice. And someone else can be the expert, and I'll just be the, a bit of the host, I guess. And I'm fine with that. Um, let's see. You're interested in the intersection of science, art, and education. That's pretty much where I am. That must be why Pacific Plankton and I get along so well. So, you will repeat a few times tomorrow, but these are collected, handled, and dyed humanely and with quite a few permits. That's good to point out. Don't go killing lizards just to see what's inside of them, to make sure you can see how they tick. Let the experts do it. Make sure you have a permit for it, and what you're doing has definitely got value for science. Right. The SEM is so morbid. Uh, you know, and not only does everything that's in it have to be dead or killed, but also it happens in darkness, and it's truly the dark side. It's the side of science where everything takes place in dark, and we get to get really close, see lots of cool stuff, and get a bunch of really cool textures, right? So, why do the microorganisms have so symmetric forms and patterns? You know, it's probably something to do with how they form. Symmetry is a common component of almost all living organisms, especially ones with a rigid skeleton. But it's probably about just the genetic makeup, the design that leads them to symmetrical patterns. Um, it's a very philosophical question that you're asking. I don't know if you're meaning it to be, but the like, why symmetry? It's probably less, uh, you know, critical for organisms that don't crawl around. But I have news for you: diatoms can crawl around, some of them. So, you know, but I don't. They had symmetry before they could crawl. So, it probably just has something to do with what they've inherited from the organisms that they form from, and then the sort of structural components and how their genetic makeup is sort of designed. So, the why question is a little bit, maybe a little too philosophical for where I sit in my ideas of things, but maybe paleontologizing has ideas as to why. Um, why symmetry? For diatoms, their symmetry, as I mentioned, it's probably about the simplicity of the body plan, because if if you have the coding already for one hand, now you've got the coding for two hands, right? All you had to do was sort of mirror it, And so a lot of organisms have sort of that mirrored symmetry. It probably just has something to do with um, not over complicating your DNA. Um, I hope that answers your question, but it's probably a little bit deeper than even that. Um, but symmetry is common in most organisms, skeletally formed organisms, anyways. Squishy organisms might not have symmetry, or might be a little bit more challenging to understand what their symmetry is. This little diatom right here, to get back a little bit to what we were doing before I started just answering questions, is a really cool one. It's Bacteriastrum. It's a type of diatom, and it looks like a brain cell to me. Let's see. Can I zoom in without zooming in too far? Yeah, perfect. So you can see it has, so the rings on the surface, that's just a girdle band from another diatom, and the thing that's in the corner on the left-hand side is another diatom, that's the Pseudonytzia, and then the two little things that are circular that are down from the bigger one that look like moons or something are Thalassiocyra, and there are other species. But the thing in the middle that looks like a sun and then has like little tree sort of things growing out from it, that's a separate diatom, and it's known as Bacteriastrum. That's the genus. I don't remember what the species was, but Pacific might remember. But these are really interesting little diatoms. They have such unique shape, and then those long spines that are sticking out, I think are actually hollow tubes. I think they're actually setae, not spines. And I think it's just like the other ones where they have like a hollow tube. They use it to sort of spread out their surface area. It's really cool. Yeah, efficiency, probably. Yeah. I think the symmetry question may be above your pay grade. I think it's actually above my pay grade. It's coding efficiency, though. Yeah, that's my intuition. It's about, I have one of my students, a master's student, who's getting his, he finished his master's with me, and he's getting his PhD with my colleague Jasmine Saros. He does 3D modeling of diatoms, and we've taken some of our diatoms and made 3D models out of them that you could print on a 3D printer. And one of the things that he realized when he was doing it is you could just take like a simple shape and then spin it around, and it makes a diatom if you do it right. And so not only are you simplifying like into like radial symmetry is really simple, because you could just make a curve and then you rotate that curve around 360 degrees, and now you have this really complicated bell shape or something, right? But the question is, like, when an organism is looking at its genetic makeup, does it just need to know that curve, right? Because then you've simplified the coding down to just this curve, and then rotate it 108 or 360 degrees, and then you make a shape, from a curve. So there's sort of like a physics geometry component to it that may be sort of nested in that idea of symmetry and how important it is for organisms. This is really, really simple coding when you think about the shape. And then a lot of the other aspects, like the little holes, are just repeated structures. They don't look like it, but they're a lot of the same repeated little structures when you get zoomed in on them. So this is a little cyclotella. I think it's either striata or Chachawachiana, and both of those diatoms have like a preference for brackish water, sort of salty brackish water. So, and that's because it should. We're looking at diatoms from San Francisco Bay, and because it's an estuary, it gets a little mix of fresh water coming from the rivers, and then there's the ocean right there. So it sort of gets this sort of brackish. When there's higher river flow, it gets kind of like a brackishy or a little bit more freshwater influence. So there's a whole bunch of these Chaetoceros diatoms in the background. This thing right here, this little boat-shaped thing, is Pseudonytzia. This big guy right here, that's sort of spine sticking off of it with the eyelashes. Sorry, it's easier to see when I zoom in. So you see those little like eyelash structures that are sticking off on one side, and then there's like a really long tube that runs out the center of it. That's a Datylum, and that's the genus. Of course, the species is Brightwellii or something. I don't remember. But you see those little eyelash structures. It's actually a triangle prism, like a true prism, like a column that's made out of triangles, and that has like a long spine sticking out the top. We sometimes find them. This sample's been processed. The other sample we were looking at was unprocessed, but we sometimes find them pointing face up when the middle part of the diatom has been destroyed. Here's a long skinny thing. That's an interesting one. Don't know what that species was. I think these are another really cool little diatom. Don't know the name of that one either. I'm going to send these samples, these slides, back to Pacific Plankton. And there's another Bacteriastrum. And then she can look at these clean diatom slides at really high magnification. I should point out, we're not looking at these at the highest magnification of my microscope. I'm going to take us there right now, though, just so that you can get a good sense of it. So here's another one of these Cyclotella striata or Chachuachiana, something like that. In order to go up to the highest magnification on my microscope, we actually need to put a little drop of oil on the sample, on the slide cover, and then this objective is designed to be immersed in oil, and you can see the oil kind of rolling over the surface of it. And then I'm going to get it into focus. It's close, but it's not close enough, right? This is how I usually look at diatoms, at 1000x magnification, 1000 times, and with oil immersion. And I'm going to clean up the image a little bit more because this is differential interference contrast, and I'm going to also turn up the contrast for you. And that's really how I usually look at diatoms, at a nice high clear resolution so you can see all the detail. Now, one of the things that's really cool, because I'm still with my camera, I can zoom in, we can look at the really close detail, is you can really see that colliculate sort of brainy kind of texture in the center of the diatom. And then these little lines that go radiating out around the outside edge are called striae. And that just means Latin for stripes. However, when I get the diatom focused at just the right height, you can see that the surface is actually like what we call transverse undulation. In other words, it's like a hill. It's like a slope with a little hill in it. And so the middle part kind of looks pinched right now. And what you really see when it gets at the right height is that little row of circular dots around the outside edge of the part that's sticking up. And that is super characteristic of this group. And the little row of dots that you see are actually what we call strutted processes. So in some of the SEM images that I've collected recently, you can see those structures. You can see either the little holes, or if you flip them over on the inside, you actually can see the strutted processes. And just to give you a sense of like how much better the SEM is than a typical light microscope, those things look like little flowers when you get really close to them, or little trumpets or something. And here in the light microscope, they just look like a little circle of dots. I mean, it's just impossible to even see what's going on without zooming in. But for years, microscope like this is all people had, and they still got most of the taxonomy right. Those early pioneers, they learned how to do all kinds of cool things. They would put their finger in between the light, like I'm doing right now, in between the light and the bottom of the microscope. You see what that does? It moves the light around, because the light actually then warps around my finger. And when it does that, it creates all kinds of patterns, but it also lets me see details that I could not see before doing that. And they had all these great tricks for seeing structures like this, but they still couldn't get sort of SEM resolution. They knew there was something there. They just didn't know what that dot was. So this trick where they put their fingers in there and they put like a pencil or something in between the light and the objective, um, causes the light to basically wrap around the finger, and then it causes the light that's coming in to be at a weird angle, an incident angle, and it's kind of similar to dark field. So a similar kind of idea. The light kind of curls around and comes in at a different angle. And they would also put, which we never do, by the way, they would put a drop of oil between the condenser and the actual slide on the bottom. And what that does is creates a continual column of light, which then makes it a little bit brighter. And the brighter you get it, usually when you have this sort of high resolution, super high magnification, the brighter is usually better. So this is a pretty cool microscope, and they didn't have digital cameras, so they couldn't just go like, oh, I'm just gonna like zoom on into that crazy little thing and look at it. We can do that because I have optical zoom on my camera. So now we're looking at, that's 1,000 times 100, or times 10, sorry, that's 10,000 times magnification. But of course, it doesn't get any better, it just gets bigger, right? So that's the problem. We can't resolve things better by making them bigger. They just get bigger. It's like if you took a microscope and projected it on a wall, right? It's bigger, but you can't see more detail. And that's why we actually have to switch to the scanning electron microscope. There's a point at which basically your resolution just sort of craps out, right? So, sorry, I'm like way off on a tangent. And I'm also zoomed in like crazy. I'm just going to go back to this, and then I kind of want to come back to the channel because I've been like out there just talking about whatever, right? So, yeah, it's a type of algae. And let's see, I saw some diatoms gliding along before. Yeah, not in any of these samples that I have, but I could go grab some material from like a frozen lake, pull it in, and there'll be some diatoms living on it. We can watch them crawl around a little if you'd like. I'm a shadow puppeteer with the fingers, yeah, a little bit. Like dodging, yeah. And it's a pretty cool, oblique lighting is a pretty cool idea. Hey, Devil and Mrs. J. Did we give a shout out to Devil and Mrs. J? You did. Okay, good. Sorry, I'm just a little behind on the chat. So, bending light with my fingers. Yeah, watch light bend in the blower. Let's see. Let's see. Actually, thinking of morphology versus genetics, there are gene-based phylogenies of diatoms, or is it all morpho stuff? So diatom species are largely based on their skeleton, but there's cryptic diversity. So one of my colleagues, Evelyn Pinsel, Dr. Evelyn Pinsel, she studies Pinularia borealis, and she found, like, looking at the shapes of the diatoms and then looking at their genetics, something like 40 what we would probably consider to be species that are different, but genetically different. But when you look at their skeleton, they kind of just make the same looking skeleton. That's really hard to distinguish one from the other. So, that's a little like above my pay grade kind of question again, which is like, when you start looking at the genetics versus the morphology, how do you tell what's a species? This is like a question that my friend Itzi also studies for diatoms. It's like trying to figure out like that relationship between the morphological aspect of it and the phylogenetic or phenotypic aspect of it. And I don't know. I look at the skeletons, so like when people start talking genetic stuff, I'm usually just like, it's over my head a little. Well, not totally, but some of it is. So, but it's a good question. Yeah, we're pretty good at breaking up the species concept, unfortunately. And I've been working at it myself, looking at fossil stuff to kind of screw things up for that as well. So earlier we were looking at these really like just little holes in these diatoms, but I wanted to come back and look at them a little more closely, just so that we could talk about how amazing the structure of diatom, the ultrastructure of diatoms is, and why I always want to look at them in the scanning electron microscope. And that's because if you look at this, sorry, I wanted to fix that if I can. It's a little bright. When we got zoomed in anyway. There we go.
you can actually see some of the detail in the light microscope here. Those just look like little circles when we were zoomed way out and looking at it from like 100x, and then when I zoomed into 1000x, what you see is it's ridiculous the sort of detail they have at such high magnifications. So those little things that we thought were just holes, well, at some elevation, they are just holes. But when you zoom in, what you find out is that the holes are covered with what's called a cribra, which is basically like a little salt and pepper sort of shaped surface, like a dome. And the little tiny holes actually have holes inside of them that is like a cage, like a colander, like that you'd use to drain pasta, that cover over each one of those holes. So in well-preserved diatoms, when you put that into the scanning electron microscope, we can zoom right in on this like crazy and actually see that kind of detail to the point where those holes, that little tiny holes, the little dots that you see that are in that shaky view, in the scanning electron microscope are like, the size of your finger or something, like totally visible. It's pretty cool. So yeah, we're at the limit really of our optical resolution, and what makes this microscope special is actually this. Like that detail, that little bit of detail is only there because my microscope is a research grade microscope, and it's got a really nice condenser, and the condenser is actually doing a lot of the work. It makes the numerical aperture combined with the numerical aperture of the actual objectives. Yeah. That really gives us the ability to see all those little tiny holes in such detail, right? That really clearly see those structures. In a normal microscope, you probably would just see them like this. They would, you might just barely be able to pick out that you got the little sort of flower-like structures around them. But we can actually zoom in real close, and with my camera sort of blow them up to full size. You're giving me thumbs up about Georgia. I thought maybe that's what that was about. Okay, so yeah. Oh, we're grappling with similar stuff as it comes to dinosaurs, like how long does a species have to evolve by anagenesis before you can call it a new species? Boy, I am right there with that conversation. I've got species of diatoms that are evolving over a span of about 4,000 years in 2 different cores where I've identified it, and I just need to write the papers up. But this is a really tough question, and when I start talking with my colleagues, this is the part where they're just like, yikes, because it's really crazy. So microscope fossil stuff, gotta love it. That's how I feel about it. How many microscopes do I have? That's a question from InXItU, who comes to the channel frequently. I have this one, which is actually a microscope from my lab that I've borrowed and brought home. And I have, try not to spill my water. I've got this little guy, which is a field microscope, also from my lab that I brought home. I've got 5 of these. They only cost a couple $100, but my daughter can use it to analyze whatever she wants, so that's nice. And it just has a camera instead of eyepieces, which is sort of cool. So you can just look at the screen and see what's in the microscope. And then I have, so those aren't ones that I own. Those are ones I've borrowed from the university. At the university, I have another one that's identical to this high-end one. And then I have 2 that are basically identical to the one that Pacific Plankton uses, which is this is a Leica DM2500. She uses a little Leica, no, not Leica, it's a Zeiss Primo Star. So I've got 2 little Primo Stars that students can use when the big scopes are being used, like I'm hogging this one right now. And then I've got access to another 8 microscopes that are Olympus microscopes that are used mostly for petrology, but we put some 100x objectives on them so that we could look at diatoms with them if we needed to. And then I've got a scanning electron microscope, and I've got a stereo microscope, and then access to about a dozen other stereo microscopes. And then I actually have a microscope that I own that's mine in the other room, but it's an old one, and it's a like personally important to me microscope because it's the microscope that Gene Stormer, who trained me on diatoms in the year 2000, when I was learning diatoms, it's the microscope that he used to use, and he passed away, I think maybe 2012 or something like that now. It's been a while, but he's a super famous diatomist from North America. He's the first diatomist who got a job at a university doing like paleo, like research diatom stuff in North America. And he sort of paved the way for like a whole generation of diatomists. And so I got that microscope because at the diatom meetings they had like they have like an auction sometimes, and it was important to me, so I bid out the other people until I got it. I was fortunate enough to have saved up enough money that I could do that. But it's an old microscope, and so this one's a lot better. And also, this comes with like a camera port that my camera can fit on. So, let's see, what type of cells are those? So this is just a single-celled organism. So that's just the skeleton in its. That's just the skeleton that it has. It's the cell wall that you're looking at. So diatoms are single-celled, and it's like, think of like a plant with a cell wall. That's what its cell wall is, only it makes its cell out of silica. So, can I see the coronavirus with it? No. Coronavirus is usually in the range of about 100 nanometers, roughly. And it's sort of too small even for the scanning electron microscope. So you can see it be a part of sort of a blurry blob, but you could see it, just not clearly, right? Not in a way that's good. It reminds you of coral. It's like coral. Looks like coral for sure. It's like scleractinian corals, right? They have that sort of structure to them, hexagonally shaped. My camera's gone to sleep, I think. I can wake it up, hopefully. Looks like you're just sitting here. I'm going to go ahead and go to sleep. Just chat. Let's see. Is the golden ratio found in microscopy? I think so. It thinks I need an Olympus battery, but I put the generic battery in there because they're cheaper. The Primo Star is a tiny little microscope. It looks like it's like half the size of this one. It's a nice microscope, though. Do you get pushback on the idea of anagenesis in diatom circles? I can prove it. So in mine, there's no other explanation for it than anagenesis. There might be some people who don't like it, but I'm just going to have to say tough to those people, because there's no other explanation for how some of what I observe could happen. And I think I'm one of the only people who's able to like sort of showcase that. I just haven't published it yet because busy. But I'm going to work on it this year. It's on my to-do list for 2021. So you're so glad that Paleontologizing chose to raid my channel. Well, I'm glad he did too. You want to know, I was mentioning this earlier in our stream, but I'm at 977 followers, and I started streaming in August, and it took me like maybe a month to get my act together. So, like to really have a good plan for how I was going to stream. And I've almost reached 1,000 followers. So that's super exciting to me. And it's great when people like Paleontologizing can kind of bring their huge crowd in and hang out with us. The microscope streaming crowd is sort of my crowd on my squad here on Twitch. And hopefully we can all kind of like benefit from, being able to share the people who are interested in science on Twitch. It's nice to see so many people that are always in Paleontologizing's channel. Dinosaurs are cool to look at, and he does a great job with all of his streaming. It's very polished. It's super exciting. So anyway, let's see. 140 nanometers, something like that. Is it possible to stream the SEM? Mark, that's what I do. That's my thing. Mark,
Mark 6 Mark, you just need to show up tomorrow 1 to 3 p.m. to this same place, and you will see us cutting up lizards and putting them in the SEM. And Saturday, we do the same thing except for without the lizards and more diatoms. So, um, let's see. Yeah, that's pretty good. My following's doing okay. And also the average viewership has been pretty good. So, um, you know, still not up to partner levels, but um, it's growing, and excited about that. So, lizards, yeah. Sarah was here earlier. I don't know if she's still around. It's getting late. It's past midnight where I live. Um, what exactly is a diatom? Well, I have an answer for you. It's just like exclamation point and then the word diatom, and then my robot will tell you what they are. But if you want me to tell you what they are, they're a single-celled organism, golden brown algae, and they generate oxygen. That's primarily what they do. They're the base of the food web in all aquatic systems. So everything that's in aquatic systems, think of it like, plants are in the terrestrial realm. The things eat the plants, and that's how we get like the base of our food pyramid. Diatoms are basically the base of the food pyramid for everything in the freshwater and in oceans. They're the primary food source for fish, invertebrates that are aquatic in nature, rotifers, water bears, copepods, whatever, they eat diatoms. They're the food source. I like to study them because they are highly responsive to environmental conditions. So they have very short lifespans. Many of them are cosmopolitan in nature, and they have a skeleton that preserves. And as a result, they can evolve very rapidly. They can tell us quite a bit about an environment. And if you were looking, like trying to think through, like what are the things that we need in fossils that are the best characteristics, I just gave you a list. You want something that fossilizes readily. You want something that's very widely distributed. You want something that is highly productive, so I don't need a lot of material in order to analyze a sample, for example. They're very abundant in all aquatic ecosystems, so they're easy to find everywhere, and they're highly responsive to environmental conditions. So it's like if you were putting a list together of like what's the perfect model for a fossil organism, I just gave it to you. Dinosaurs are cool, but it's hard to get access to dinosaur bones. They're rare. They're exceedingly rare on the landscape, and when people find them, it's amazing. And diatoms are everywhere. They're in every aquatic environment you can think of. If it's wet and it just has a little bit of nutrients, diatoms are present in it. And you could put a pot of water that's just basically pure water on your roof. You could sprinkle a little bit of nutrients in it, and you could come back in a month and there'll be diatoms that have colonized that water source. They're in absolutely every water source. They're in sidewalk when it rains and there's a little bit of water that shows up in the road. Diatoms are present in that water. So, I mean, the dinosaurs are really hard to dig up, right? And then you also have, like, for dinosaurs, I'm not trying to trash dinosaurs, but for dinosaurs, you have like a bone that's like the size of this freaking room, right? For diatoms, I just need like in the amount that you could fit in the head of a toothpick. Like just scoop a little bit of mud and put it on a toothpick. I have enough to analyze an entire sample and tell you what that environment was like. So, I mean, for a tool, that's something that's beneficial. And, ideally you'd want to use information like that to inform things that help us understand about the environment. That's what I do. That's my primary sort of role as a paleoecologist. So yeah, you can't really fight that as a it just has everything that you would want. The only environments that diatoms don't do well in is highly alkaline environments. So, and that's because alkaline, when it gets above pH of about 9, silica starts to dissolve. And if you get up into like 10, 11 pH, basically the skeletons of diatoms can be completely removed. You can probably still get the ancient DNA out of some of the material, and you can get pigments sometimes that will tell you that diatoms have been there, but they won't tell you which kind of diatom. Well, the DNA will, but the the issue is, of course, that you need a lot of it, and if you go back really far in time, the aDNA stuff also kind of gets hard to be reliable. So I wonder if the problem with die-off coral reefs in connection to the sunscreen relates to how diatoms focus light through their exoskeletons and their chloroplasts, and how this is messed with by sunscreen agents. I don't know anything about that. I think most of the problem with coral reefs is that temperature. From what I understand, the whiting events are largely related to the water temperature getting higher, but it can't be exclusively that. So, but corals have a dinoflagellate that lives inside of them, zooxanthellae, which has a symbiotic relationship with them. So they spit out the zooxanthellae, but there's something related to light there as well, because of course the dinoflagellates that live in them, they need light. They're hermatypic, so they need to have that like sunlight aspect of them mixed in. The corals themselves aren't photosynthesizing anything, but they have to live symbiotically with an organism that does. So the diatoms do rain from the skies. It's a different story I'll talk about some other time probably. The sample sizes you can get in diatoms, yeah, I missed that. We already did that. There are diatoms that are blowing in the wind. There's definitely diatoms out there. Sorry, I was just stuck on the same image for a really long time. I apologize for that. There's another Thalassocyra, there's another Casadiscus. Here's some of those Pseudonychia. Pseudonychia are kind of interesting. They are one of the only types of diatoms that actually make toxic components to them. So Pacific Plankton can talk to you a little bit about the way that they make toxins, and then it gets accumulated in things like lobsters and then causes problems for people. I don't study that stuff, but she knows a lot about it. And there's another Thalassocyra, and this thing right here is a really cool little odontelloid-like thing. There's a bunch of them right here. They look like little spaceships or alien heads, or what are the things that in the Toy Story where the claw comes and gets them? They look like those, kind of. You know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. Here's one of those Datillum with their eyelashes right there. And this is a Cattosaurus. So there's a really high diversity in these samples. It's partly because they're collected in an environment that mixes fresh and salt water, but also partly because this sample actually represents a fairly long period in time. So Pacific Plankton collected the sample and then collected samples every Monday and Thursday, and sometimes more frequently, for weeks, and then she stored them all up in a big jar, and then she dumped them all together and sent that to me. So so this is a sample that actually has multiple weeks worth of stuff, and I made this. There's a little skeletonema for you. If you want to get a good sense of the differences between what we can see with the light microscope and what we can see with the scanning electron microscope, this little guy right here in the middle is a skeletonema. And you see those little, like, it looks like little fingers. They're kind of doing this. Those are actually spines that kind of knuckle together at the ends, and they hold the cell together. And let me see real quick if I can, let me get my Instagram page and I'll grab one of these for you. I'm sure I have one relatively recently that we looked at. Did I not? Maybe I didn't post it on Instagram, but I have some on here. I have a really nice skeletonema I haven't posted yet on Instagram that I need to colorize. Hang on. So there you go. You can go look at that. That's what we're looking at in the light microscope right now. So if you click on that link, it'll take you to my Instagram page, or this exact diatom that we're looking at, skeletonema. And you can see those long stretch, sort of like bone-like or finger-like extensions around the outside of it. And you can see that we're looking at the exact same thing right now. And this is as good as you can get of a light microscope, and we're as close as you could possibly view it, and that's what it looks like to us, which is, just kind of like fingery things sticking out. But when you look at that SEM image, you can see the difference between the two of them, and that's because we stopped using light and we started using electrons to see, right, to get a topographic understanding of that surface. So it's pretty cool, and it's really like a privilege to be able to showcase that for people. So I really enjoy doing it. Ooh, there's one of these little guys. What do we call that one? Lithodesmium, maybe? Or triceradium, maybe. A little triangle-shaped guy. I'm sure Pacific Plankton knows what it is. Or better than I do, anyway. Okay. So, the stream's actually been going on for quite a long time. Longer than I normally stream, for sure. I like to try to keep them like 2 hours long because I have to talk the whole time. And I'm not quite in my mid-season form like I usually am because I haven't been lecturing a whole bunch. But it's usually about this time that I think, oh, we should go raid somebody, bring an end to this me rambling for hours on end about diatoms and water bears and rotifers and whatever else it is that we're looking at. So I'm going to try to figure out... Scroll to my August 25th Instagram post. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It should just take you straight to it. We'll eventually live in cloud cities on Venus and Mars and the moon. Maybe. How much of the biomass is diatoms? On Earth? Are you asking? I don't know the answer to that question. Triceradium. Yeah, it's starting to get late. I want to say thank you for everybody who came over from Paleontologizing stream from that raid. And I have a long list of people. I want to read their names who have followed us. We're at 980 viewers. We're just like 20 away from... So hopefully tomorrow while we're streaming the lizard thing, we'll hit 1,000 viewers. And I'll have to bring something to celebrate, I guess. Not that I care about numbers, but it's a cool one. So Crixtian 3, Crixtian R, sorry. Aram Visser, thank you for the follow just now. The Ways, M4 Hen, So Spartan, Senko Moon, Gator Gal, that sounds like a cool name. You like gators? Maybe you like lizards. Luca, Fossil Vet, Broken Sandwiches, Virtual Assistant, Music Carrion, Lightning Blitz, Bob and Gaz. Chai was here asking questions for a while. Backyard Expedition, 420 Nathan 69, Paul Warren. Got a whole bunch of people. Look at all these people. T Weasel, that is a cool name, T Weasel. Logan, I don't want gift sub. Well, you might get stuck with some. And Grits and Gravy, that's a cool name as well. That was from the Paleontologizing raid. It was about an hour ago. Manda Pandable and Mark 6 Mark, H. Steimer, the Gompy, and then we're back into the people that I've already mentioned previously. We also had a raid from Electrical Longboard. I brought in 20 people earlier in the channel. I'm very excited to have had so many people come in and hang out with us, especially for one of these unplanned sort of evening streams where I'm trying to balance the microscope and talking and chat and everything else, which are sometimes challenging. The SEM sometimes creates a similar problem for me. It's sort of a theme where I have to sort of focus on the microscope for a while, and then I can come back and sort of see what chat had to say. And I really want to thank Pacific Plankton for sending us these samples, and also always for hanging out and helping moderate the channel and answer questions and that sort of thing. Oh, Miss Daisy D is streaming. Okay, we might go get Miss Daisy D. She's another person who's sometimes contributed Lunamoths to us for a previous SEM stream, and she's a sort of a artist who does a bunch of really cool animations and paintings recently with using Procreate on her her iPad. So I want to also thank again paleontologizing for stopping over and for hanging out. I know how sometimes you get to the end of a stream and you're just like, I'm done with it. So it's great that you actually kind of hang out and have such great questions and kind of help build the discussion and carry on some of the discussion when I'm I'm a little busy trying to do my things. Yeah, the collaboration between Pacific Plankton and I is great. We also play Minecraft together sometimes in my Discord, and as some of the other people in our community do as well. So we're also collaborating on staying alive in a digital Lego world where we build castles and stuff and fight skeletons. Just she sometimes tries to kill the monsters with potatoes and things. So I mean, I have to do most of the fighting. I don't mind. All right, thanks for hanging out, people. And oh, Econ Greg. Yeah, maybe we could go get Econ Greg as well. So, did we get another follower while I was screwing around? Yeah, Acid New York City. Thank you for the follow. I really appreciate all the follows, and we're so close to 1,000. So it's great, and it's been a really full evening. A lot of fun doing streams when there's people here and there's sort of interesting questions, and we look at a bunch of really cool stuff in the light microscope. Also, I want to give a shout out to Little Chook, who was here earlier in our stream. She also sort of drew us the Tardy Bee graphic that we had up. So we weren't here for the water bear part. We had this Tardy Bee graphic running for a little bit. It's the sexualized version of a water bear, and it got one of the water bears super excited. Just it sort of seemed to see it and then came to life, which was cool. So she drew that. She's a pretty cool artist. Does a bunch of drawings and watercolors and things. Okay, so let's go find someone to raid, and I think we got suggestions, and I need to get out of the mod view so I could even see who's out there to make sure that we're not going to go blindly into a non-channel. Let me close some screens and come back in the backside here. And Econ Greg is a good choice. So why don't we go get Econ Greg, who recently we started following and he started following us. He's currently just chatting. So Dirty B is hot, isn't she? For a water bear. Oh, she's got all those legs and that sunburn. Econ, we like to have fun sometimes too. All right, so Econ Greg, let's see if we can get that correct. We did. All right, I want to thank everybody for hanging out, and hopefully you all had some fun. We saw some cool stuff, and we'll see you tomorrow if you're looking for lizards to be dissected live on Twitch, and also then see what their skin looks like up close. So it'll be a really interesting stream for me, because I don't know anything about lizards other than basic stuff, I guess. All right, a huge ton of people followed, and we had a really great stream. It went on for a long time, but I think it was fun the whole time. So we'll see everybody tomorrow. We're going to go raid Econ Greg now. So thanks for hanging out and for the raids, and we'll go. All right, great. Here we go.